Chapter 431. Echoing Mountain Range, Treasure Vault. The higher the grade of mental cultivation method and martial skill, the less paper or animal skin was used to record and pass down. Most of the time, jade slips that had been stored for a longer period of time and were more secure were used. In his previous life, when he poisoned the illegitimate son of the Yushu Temple's Grand Palace Master, he accidentally obtained the Great Mystery Heart Sutra cultivation method, which was passed down in the form of jade slip. Therefore, after appearing in the area where martial skills and mental cultivation method were passed down, Yuhaoran went directly to the place where the jade slips were stored, and then used his mind to read the contents of the jade slip. There were not many jade slips, only 32 of them. In just a few minutes, Yuhaoran had already checked the contents of all the jade slips and found that the jade slips did not store any martial skills or mental cultivation method, nor were they any special secret methods. Instead, they were letters between the forces behind the echoing mountain bandits and each leader and the 4 protectors. Through the contents recorded in the 32 jade slips, he had basically understood the intricate and complicated interests behind the echoing mountain bandit. He also felt very regretful that the 100 Chi Gate did not get involved in it in advance. After putting away the 32 jade slips, Yuhaoran stood in place and waited for a while. Yuhaoran, there are many good things in the area where the refining materials are stored. I have secretly put them away. Until the thawing voice came from the Sea of Consciousness, Yuhaoran turned around and returned to Hiruyu's side. How is it? Looking at Yuhaoran, Hiruyu asked. The situation in the elixir area is exactly the same as the first 2 floors of the treasure vault. However, I already have an idea in my heart, but whether it is true or not, I still need to enter the 4th floor of the treasure vault to further verify it. Turning his head to look at the place where the elixir bottles were stored, Yuhaoran nodded, and then motioned Hiryu to go directly to the 4th floor of the treasure vault. After entering the 4th floor through the green light curtain, Yuhaoran found that the 4th floor of the treasure vault was filled with all kinds of magic tools and treasures of different shapes and type. Yuhaoran, the treasures on this floor don't seem to be missing. In the first 4 floors of the treasury, Hiryu was mainly in charge of the spirit stones on the 1st floor, as well as the top treasures and magic tools on the 4th floor. Moreover, compared to the huge amount of treasures on the first 3 floors, there were very few treasures and magic tools on the 4th floor. There were only 26 of them. Therefore, Hiryu only needed a glance to determine whether the treasures were missing. Are you sure? Yuhaoran asked as he turned to look at Hiryu. I'm sure. Hiryu nodded heavily and promised. Yuhaoran appeared in front of a jade box in a flash. Then, he stretched out his hand and opened the jade box. He then gestured to Hiryu. Ryu, what was originally stored in this jade box? How is this possible? Looking at the empty jade box, Hiryu said in disbelief. Yuhaoran, originally, the jade box contained a lump of profound origin liquid that could directly increase one's cultivation and strength, as well as have a certain chance of comprehending the power of laws. However, due to the volatility of the profound yuan liquid itself, it cannot leave the jade box for a long period of time. Otherwise, the energy contained within the profound yuan liquid would gradually weaken until it finally disappears. That's right. Hearing Hiruyu's explanation, Yuhaoran nodded and became even more certain of his conjecture. Then, he looked up at the treasures on the 4th floor of the treasury and found 3 more jade boxes and 2 wooden boxes made of evergreen wood. Pulling Hiruyu's hand, Yuhaoran went directly to the jade and wooden boxes. He opened them one by one. Except for a wooden box containing a jade pendant carved with a blue dragon, the treasures in the other 4 boxes had all disappeared. According to Hiryu, the missing treasures were all top-notch treasures that could be used to increase one's cultivation and strength. They contained a large amount of spiritual energy. At this moment, Yuhaoran not only guessed the real reason for the disappearance of the 6th-level spirit stones and pills, as well as the treasures containing a large amount of spiritual energy, but he also roughly knew how many floors there were in the treasury and what kind of treasures were stored in the treasury after the 4th floor. Thinking that the treasures stored in the treasury after the 4th floor were all life-threatening, Yuhaoran did not take the risk of immediately entering the 5th floor of the treasury. Instead, he carefully examined the remaining 10 or so treasures on the 4th floor. However, at this moment, the Thaling in his sea of consciousness suddenly asked for the jade pendant he had just found. Yuhaoran, send the jade pendant you found in the wooden box to the victor. Communicating with the victor in his mind, Yuhaoran directly sent the jade pendant carved with the blue dragon into the victor. When he had received the jade pendant, he had already used his mind and Yuanli to examine it and did not discover any secrets. Therefore, even if the Thaling did not take the initiative to ask for it, after examining all the treasures, he would have taken the initiative to ask the Thaling to help him examine it. After giving the jade pendant to the Thaling, Yuhaoran's gaze turned to the remaining 10 or so treasures. There was a simple and unadorned pill furnace with 2 slightly damaged ends. Slowly walking to the pill furnace, he carefully examined the engravings on the surface of the pill furnace: a flower, a grass, a tree, a bug, and a person. At the same time, his mind also recalled that he had seen records of this pill furnace in a certain historical site in his previous life. Exactly the same, regardless of whether it was the content of the engravings, the shape, the size, or the position of the engravings, they were all exactly the same as in the records. Yuhaoran was already 50% confident in his heart. Placing his hand on the pill furnace, he mobilized the Yuan Li in his dantian and injected it into the pill furnace. The green flame that had been lying quietly in the pill furnace immediately began to burn. Stretching his free right hand into the pill furnace, he carefully felt the temperature of the green flame. Discovering that it was exactly the same as in the records, his confidence instantly increased to 70%. From the storage ring, he took out an ordinary 9th-level spiritual medicine and threw it directly into the pill furnace. Then, he increased the input of Yuanli. The green flame that originally did not cause any harm to his hand, in less than 3 seconds, refined the spiritual medicine that he had just thrown into the pill furnace into a ball of spiritual liquid the size of a fingernail. Sucking out the spiritual liquid and carefully observing it, Yuhaoran was pleasantly surprised to discover that using the green flame to refine the spiritual medicine, not only was the refining speed faster, but the purity of the spiritual liquid after refining was basically close to perfection. At this moment, he was completely confident that this pill furnace was the life pill furnace of the Saint Fan Miaozuan from 30,000 years ago. However, from the extent of the damage to the pill furnace and the fact that he had used Yuanli to drive it, this pill furnace had once suffered unimaginable damage. Not only had it caused the pill furnace's grade to drop to the Saint low level, but the tool spirit of the pill furnace had also been completely destroyed. Although losing the tool spirit was equivalent to losing the inheritance of Saint Fan Miaozuan in alchemy, Yuhaoran did not feel too much regret in his heart. Because of his passionate, adventurous experience in his previous life, he had more than once come into contact with the inheritance and records of alchemy that were not inferior to or even superior to Saint Fan Miaozuan's. In terms of alchemy, Yuhaoran was confident that he would not lose to Saint Fan Miaozuan. If the tool spirit of the pill furnace still existed, it was very likely that it would affect his use of the pill furnace. To completely refine a Saint low-level pill furnace, he had to use the power of his soul. Now that his cultivation had not broken through to the martial ancestor realm, he could only temporarily put away the pill furnace. Then, his gaze turned to the other treasures. However, after sweeping his gaze over the remaining dozen treasures, Yuhaoran discovered that most of these treasures were only martial ancestor realm and were not of much use to him. But considering that the Qinyan faction and eldest senior brother had just ascended to the throne of the sect master, They needed these treasures to win people's hearts. After asking for Hiryu's permission, Yuharan directly put them into his storage ring. Chapter 432. In the treasure house of the Echo Mountain Range. Ryu, go back to the first level of the treasure house and use the dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth on the first level, as well as the top elixir I gave you to speed up the recovery of the side effects of the secret skill. After careful consideration, Yuharan finally decided not to take Hiryu to the fifth level of the treasure house. After all, what was going on the fifth level of the treasure house was just his guess. If his guess was wrong, it would be fine. At most, he would go back again and continue to explore the fifth level with Hiryu. But if his guess was right, he would not be able to take care of Hiryu if they fought in the end. Why? Hiryu asked with dissatisfaction. Because there are no precious treasures on the fifth level of the treasure house. Instead, there is a certain danger. Knowing that Hiryu would question him, Yuharan could only tell the truth, and even use some hurtful methods to refuse Hiryu. If you enter the fifth level of the treasure house in your current state, not only will you not be able to help me, but you will also drag me down and may even put me in fatal danger. No. Yuharan's refusal sounded a little hurtful. After all, she could not use her divine soul and Yuanli now because Yuharan asked her to use the secret skill of life and death on a thin line. But how could Hiryu let Yuharan enter the fifth level of the treasure house alone? Hauran, with the elixir you gave me and the treatment during this period, I will be able to completely recover in 2 to 3 hours at most. At that time, I will accompany you to the fifth level of the treasure house. Hiryu ordered without hesitation. Alas! With a sigh, Yuharan walked directly to Hiryu. He nodded helplessly and reached out to touch her hair. When she lowered her head because of shyness, Yuharan's finger directly hit her sleep acupuncture point. Yuharan, you! Hiryu glared at Yuharan with eyes full of anger. Then, she closed her eyes and fainted. Reaching out to hold Hiryu who was about to fall, Yuharan took out a pill from his storage ring that could help her sleep and nourish her soul through sleep. Then, he helped her take it. Yuharan, what are you doing? Seeing that Yuharan not only took the initiative to knock out Hiryu, but also helped her to take the pill that could increase her sleep, Thaling asked in puzzlement. Because I don't want her to take any risks. Yuharan took out a few clothes from his storage ring, stacked them together and spread them on the ground. Then, he placed Hiryu on top of the clothes so that she could sleep more comfortably. Take a risk. After hearing Yuharan's promotion, Thaling repeated the sentence and asked in confusion. Yuharan, this is the first time you've entered this mysterious treasure house. How do you know that there are dangers on the fifth floor of the treasure house? Thaling, do you remember that in Ryu's bedroom, you once told me that you found a few high-level martial sage experts who were cultivating in seclusion under the Echo Mountain Range? Yuharan did not immediately answer Thaling's question and asked instead. Of course I remember, Thaling replied. After all, the way those martial sage experts cultivated in seclusion was very similar to a certain forbidden method in the legends. He wanted to further confirm the authenticity and see if he could use this method to help Yuharan improve his cultivation and strength. Thaling, can you recall the number of martial sage experts who were cultivating in seclusion under the Echo Mountain Range? Yuharan asked. Let me think. When Thaling discovered the martial sage experts who were cultivating in seclusion under the Echo Mountain Range, he did not dare to observe too much for fear of waking them up. Therefore, in the face of Yuharan's interrogation, he carefully recalled and finally confirmed his answer. I think there were 5 of them. Thaling, can you recall the cultivation of these 5 martial sage experts in detail? Yuharan continued to ask. The Tower Genie replied in an uncertain tone after recalling for a moment. The lowest cultivation was at the peak of the 6th grade martial sage. The highest cultivation was at the peak of the 9th grade martial honorable realm, and was about to break through to the martial honorable realm. As for the cultivation of the other three, I did not observe carefully, and could not confirm their true cultivation. Thowling, then let me tell you the true cultivation of those 5 people. Although Thowling's tone was uncertain, Yuhauran said with certainty. One was at the peak of the 6th grade martial sage, one was at the peak of the 7th grade martial sage, one was at the peak of the 8th grade martial sage, one was at the peak of the 9th grade martial sage, and was about to break through to the martial honorable realm. Yuhauran, how do you know all this? Hearing the certainty in Yuhauran's tone, Thowling asked in confusion. As for how I know all this, you will be able to guess all this when I enter the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range. Still not answering Thowling's question, Yuhauran instructed Black Bear. Black Bear, I will leave Ryu in your care from now on. If I am still not back when she wakes up, you must not let her enter the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range even if you have to use force. Master, I understand. Nodding, Black Bear wanted to walk to Hiryu's side, but Yuhauran raised his hand and gestured for Black Bear to continue to listen. Also, go to the 1st level of the Echo Mountain range, and bring all the spirit stones to the 4th level. Then, with the help of those spirit stones, see if you can break through the bottleneck of the 8th grade martial sage and advance to the 9th grade martial sage. Yes, Master. Black Bear replied excitedly. Actually, Black Bear could not be blamed for being so excited. Based on his current accumulation, it would not be a problem for him to advance to the peak of the 9th grade martial sage, let alone break through to the 9th grade martial sage. The only thing he lacked was a huge amount of energy. Although there were no high-level spirit stones stored in the 1st level of the Echo Mountain range, there were hundreds of thousands of spirit stones below the 6th grade. Not only would it be able to help him break through to the 9th grade martial sage, he might even be able to advance to the peak of the 9th grade martial sage. Therefore, after accepting the order, Black Bear immediately turned and rushed towards the green light screen that led to the 3rd level of the Echo Mountain range. Thowling, be alert and deal with any danger that may appear at any time. Yuhauran exhorted as he stepped into the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range. Don't worry, I'm already prepared, Thowling replied. After crossing the green light screen and entering the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range, Yuhauran was immediately surprised to find that he seemed to have returned to the Blue Moon secret realm in the spirit fog created by the upper 5th grade martial sage. Why is he here? Just as Yuhauran was carefully feeling the purity of the spirit fog in the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range to see if it could be compared with the spirit fog created by the upper 5th grade martial sage in the Blue Moon secret realm, Thowling's shocked voice came from his sea of consciousness. Thowling, did you find the expert at the peak of the 6th grade martial sage in the Echo Mountain range? Facing Thowling's shocked reaction, Yuhauran directly asked. That's right. Nodding his head, Thowling replied. At the same time, he suddenly remembered a question that Yuhauran had mentioned before entering the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range. That was, after he entered the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range, he would be able to guess how he knew the true cultivation of the 5 martial sage experts in the Echo Mountain range in advance. At this moment, seeing the expert at the peak of the 6th grade martial sage sitting cross-legged in the center of the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range, how could Thowling not guess the relationship between them? Yuhauran, could it be that this mysterious Echo Mountain range has a total of 9 levels? From the 5th level onwards, there is a martial sage expert in each level of the Echo Mountain range. That's right. Chapter 433. I gave my daughter a heads up in the morning, so the first chapter was updated a little late. Sorry. Echo Mountain Range, 5th floor of the treasure house. Yuhauran, a little to the left. Because the spiritual fog in front of him was too thick, Yuhauran could not use his sight to determine the specific direction. He could only rely on his own senses and Thowling's spiritual sense to guide him. Following the guidance of Thaling's spiritual sense, Yuhauran deviated a little to the left and continued to go deeper into the treasure house. After going deeper into the treasure house for more than 10 minutes, Yuhauran suddenly stopped and frowned as he said to Thaling in his sea of consciousness. Thaling, something is wrong. Although there were many treasures stored in the first 4 floors of the treasure house, the space of the treasure house was actually not big. Even if they walked around the entire treasure house, it would take at most 5 or 6 minutes. But just now, they had gone deeper into the treasure house for more than 10 minutes and walked for about 7 or 8 miles. Until now, they still had not reached the central area of the treasure house, which was the place where the peak 6th grade martial saint expert was cultivating. How could Yuhauran not feel strange? Thaling, whose spiritual sense was also affected by the spiritual fog, did not realize this problem until he heard Yuhauran's reminder. He also felt that something was wrong. It hurriedly used its divine sense to carefully observe the position of the martial saint expert. The pagoda spirit was shocked to discover that when they went deeper, it seemed as if they were going in circles. The distance between them and the martial saint expert did not decrease at all. Could it be that there was a formation in the treasure house's 5th floor? His spiritual sense scanned the treasure house's 5th floor and did not miss a single place. But in the end, he did not find any trace of a formation. Based on the formation's energy, which was not inferior to the level of refining, Thaling believed that the strange thing just now was not because of the formation. Since it was not because of the formation, why couldn't it accept the martial saint expert who was not too far away? After hearing the strange situation that Thaling found with his spiritual sense, Yuhauran's originally frowned brows relaxed. Then, he turned around and went back the way he came. At the same time, he was back in front of the green light screen. Without the slightest hesitation, Yuhauran directly stepped through the green light curtain and returned to the 4th floor of the treasury. "Master, you're back." When the black bear saw Yuhauran walk out of the green light curtain, it quickly stopped absorbing the spiritual energy and asked for instructions. It was in the middle of absorbing the spiritual energy. "It's fine. You can continue to absorb spiritual energy to improve your cultivation." After instructing He Xiong, Yuhauran returned to the 5th floor of the treasury through the green light curtain. "Thaling, your earlier conjecture was correct. The reason why we are unable to approach the martial saint expert is not because of the formation in the treasury," Yuhauran said confidently as he looked at the dense spiritual fog before him. "Yuhauran, if it's not because of the formation, then what's the reason why we can't get close to the martial saint expert?" Seeing that Yuhauran had regained his confidence, Thaling hurriedly asked. "I suspect." At this point, Yuhauran hesitated for a moment. Then, he waved his hand to disperse the spiritual poison in front of him and said, "Thaling, I suspect that the real reason why we can't get close to the peak of the 6th grade martial saint expert might be related to the power of law that he has comprehended." "Impossible." After hearing Yuhauran's conjecture, Thaling did not even think and directly denied it. "Yuhauran, in your previous life, you did not comprehend the power of law and your cultivation did not break through the martial saint realm. Therefore, you don't know the limitations of the power of law that a martial saint expert can use. Not to mention a mere 6th grade martial saint who has comprehended the power of law, even a martial honorable expert who has mastered the power of law cannot use the power of law for a long time. Thaling, what if it's in a special state?" Faced with Thaling's rebuttal, Yuhauran did not object and only asked, "A special state?" Thaling muttered. Then, he recalled the effect of the forbidden formation on a martial saint expert. In the end, he shook his head and continued to refute. "I don't remember under what state a martial saint expert can use the power of law for a long time. What if it's in a situation where the physical body is sealed and the soul is out of the body?" Yuhauran said with a cold smile. "Yuhauran, you're talking about the demon sealing curse. one of the 10 great forbidden techniques of the demonic path. After hearing Yuhauran mention a state, Thaling immediately thought of the origin of this state and could not help but exclaim. The demon sealing curse was the same as the grafting demonic technique that Gao Luanping of the Law Enforcement Peak had used on Ouyang Haoyu. It was one of the 10 great forbidden techniques of the demonic path. In other words, it was one of the 10 great forbidden techniques of the demonic path. However, the grafting demonic technique was only ranked 9th among the 10 great forbidden techniques of the demonic path. On the other hand, the demon sealing curse was ranked 3rd among the 10 great forbidden techniques. The difference in power and effect between the two could be imagined. That's right. The 6th grade martial saint expert in front of us should be under the demon sealing curse. Otherwise, who can guarantee that they can continuously use the power of law for months, years, or even decades? Nodding his head, Yuhauran raised his head and looked into the depths of the treasury. His tone was complicated as he sighed. It seems that it won't be long before the great Emperor Qin Kingdom has another peerless expert of the martial saint realm. Since he already knew the basic situation of the last 5 floors of the treasury, the demon sealing curse had no effect on Yuhauran. If he continued to take the risk to approach the 6th grade martial saint expert, the gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, Thaling wanted to know what Yuhauran planned to do next. Yuhauran, what do you plan to do next? It's very simple. Use the dense spirit fog in front of me and try to break through to the 6th grade martial master in the shortest time possible. Then, return to the 100 Qi gate. Yuhauran calmly replied. Okay. After hearing Yuhauran's plan, Thaling secretly let out a sigh of relief. This was because he was afraid that Yuhauran didn't know the severity of the situation and insisted on approaching the 6th grade martial saint expert at the center of the treasury. What if he woke up the peerless expert of the 9th floor, who could break through to the martial saint realm at any time? Unless Yuhauran hid in the victor for his entire life, it would be impossible for him to escape from the pursuit of that peerless expert. He didn't know how long the spirit fog had been accumulated. Whether it was the quantity or the quality, it could easily satisfy the energy needed to break through to the 6th grade martial master realm. Moreover, if it wasn't for Huang Zhonghua's disturbance at the 100 Qi peak, his cultivation would have already broken through to the peak of the 5th grade martial master realm. Therefore, Yuhauran directly sat cross-legged in front of the azure light screen and began to circulate the Great Mystery Heart Sutra. He forcefully absorbed the pure spirit fog and increased his cultivation. As strands of pure spiritual mist were forcibly absorbed by the Supreme Mysterious Heart Sutra, Shaoqin, who had already reached the point of breaking through his limits, easily broke through the bottleneck and smoothly entered the peak of Grade 5 Martial Master. Chapter 434. Echo Mountain Range, 5th floor of the Treasury. When Yuhauran broke through to the peak of the 5th grade Martial Master realm, he unexpectedly felt a mysterious feeling. It was as if something was right in front of him, but when he touched it, it was as far as the horizon. Although he did not experience this strange feeling in his previous life, he had heard about it more than once. Opening his eyes, Yuhauran looked at the spirit fog in front of him with a shocked expression. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the dense spirit fog and see the peak of the 6th grade martial saint expert sitting cross-legged in the center of the treasury. Yuhauran, what happened to you? Clearly, he had not broken through to the 6th grade martial master realm, but he suddenly stopped absorbing spirit energy and looked directly at the spirit fog in front of him. Yuhauran's inexplicable actions made Thaling very puzzled. Close at hand, but far at the horizon. Taking a deep breath, Yuhauran described the feeling he had when he broke through to the peak of the 5th grade martial master realm. Then, he asked Thaling for confirmation. Thaling, you should know what kind of power of law can have such a terrifying ability. Hearing Yuhauran's description of the power of law, Thaling asked excitedly. Yu Haoran, you're saying that the peak of the 6th grade martial saint expert in the center of the treasury has been using the devil sealing curse. The power of law has a power that is close at hand, but far at the horizon? That's right. Nodding, Yu Haoran confirmed. Moreover, when you were absorbing the spirit fog to increase your cultivation, you could clearly feel the existence of this power of law, as well as the ability of the power of law. Thaling continued to ask. That's right. Yu Haoran continued to nod and confirm. Opportunity. This is a heaven-defying opportunity. After receiving Yu Haoran's confirmation, Thaling was so excited that he did not know what to say. After a few minutes, Thaling finally calmed down a little. Then, he said with a serious expression, Yu Haoran, don't be in a hurry to leave this place. Use the process of increasing your cultivation base to firmly imprint this feeling of being so close yet so far away in your heart. Because this feeling will increase your chances of comprehending this special power of law by 50 to 60% when you break through to the martial saint realm. 50% to 60% of comprehending the power of laws was close at hand and far away at the edge of the world. The chances of comprehending the power of laws and making a breakthrough were already quite high. It was about the same as a fifth-order pill that assisted in comprehending the power of laws. Moreover, this kind of breakthrough was completely dependent on one's own comprehension. Compared to using pills to break through, one could better unleash the power of laws and raise the level of one's comprehension. After instructing Yu Haoran, Thaling's divine sense stopped at the center of the treasury. He was a very handsome expert at the peak of the 6th grade martial saint realm who looked to be in his 30s. Whether it was with the help of pills or his own comprehension, being able to grasp the power of laws close at hand and far away at the edge of the world was enough to prove that this expert at the peak of the 6th grade martial saint realm in front of him was definitely a genius with monstrous potential. It was a pity that such an outstanding genius, who had a great chance of becoming a martial saint in the future, could only use his cultivation for the rest of his life. Thaling could not help but sigh at the cruelty of this world. Closing his eyes again, Yu Haoran continued to absorb the dense spiritual mist on the 5th floor of the treasury. He also tried to suppress the speed of his cultivation base's increase as much as possible. He tried his best to feel the power that was close at hand and far away at the edge of the world. Time passed by minute. The experience of the Emerald Mountain Villa and the Echo Mountain Bandits had increased Yu Haoran's accumulation by a lot. Even if he deliberately slowed down the increase of his cultivation base, with the help of the pure spiritual mist and the stimulation of the power of laws close at hand and far away at the edge of the world, in less than 30 minutes, his cultivation base smoothly broke through to the early 6th grade martial master. With the breakthrough of the realm, the speed at which the Great Mystery Heart Sutra swallowed the spiritual mist suddenly began to accelerate. The spiritual mist that was forcibly swallowed, under the situation where Yu Haoran could not suppress it at all, continued to rapidly increase his cultivation base. Then, in less than 10 minutes, his cultivation base was forcibly increased to the middle 6th grade martial master. Facing such a sudden change, Yu Haoran thought for a moment and knew that when he broke through the realm, the energy in his body and dantian instantly soared, stimulating the Great Mystery Heart Sutra. Moreover, under the influence of the power of laws close at hand and far away at the heaven realm, the Great Mystery Heart Sutra's grade had reached the peak of the heaven realm. It might even have surpassed the heaven realm and reached the divine realm. It instinctively swallowed the pure spiritual mist, as well as the power of laws contained in the spiritual mist. Although a rapid increase in cultivation base was a good thing, it was not something that Yu Haoran wanted. Therefore, when he discovered that he could not suppress the Great Mystery Heart Sutra's instinctive action of swallowing the spiritual mist, he could only temporarily give up on the opportunity in front of him. His left hand fiercely slapped the ground, and with the force of the slap, his entire body directly crashed into the azure light curtain, borrowing the momentum to leave the 5th floor of the treasury. Without the stimulation of the dense spiritual mist and the power of laws, the Great Mystery Heart Sutra gradually calmed down. Yuhaoran hurriedly took this opportunity to consolidate his cultivation base after his breakthrough and carefully sense his gains from earlier. In a short 3 minutes, the Great Mystery Heart Sutra had forcibly swallowed the spiritual mist and directly raised his cultivation to the high 6th grade martial master. Although forcibly increasing one's cultivation base had some effect on one's foundation, the increase in realm was not much, so the effect on one's foundation was not great. Next, he only needed to consolidate for 1 or 2 days to eliminate this effect. However, Yuhaoran's current thoughts were not on his own cultivation, but on the feeling in his heart. This was because when the Great Mystery Heart Sutra forcibly swallowed the spiritual mist, it also forcibly integrated a trace of the power of laws contained in the spiritual mist into his own origin power and dantian. And this kind of forcible integration was dozens of times or even 100 times stronger than through his own feelings. In other words, although the Great Mystery Heart Sutra swallowed the spiritual mist for a very short time, it also made the feeling of being close at hand but far away at the end of the world deeply imprinted in his heart, dantian and origin power. And this kind of gain in feeling the power of laws was far more delightful for Yuhaoran than the increase in his cultivation base by a small realm. His cultivation base had already broken through, and the feeling of the power of laws was also imprinted in his heart. This time, the training of the Mount Echo Bandits could be considered completed. As for the consolidation of the realm, he needed to return to the Qingyun Peak of the 100 Qi Gate and cultivate calmly. Opening his eyes, Yuhaoran intended to take a look at Hiruyu to see if she had woken up, but a pair of eyes full of murderous intent was staring at him. Hiruyu, you're awake." Seeing that Hiruyu had woken up early and had murderous intent in her eyes, Yuhaoran greeted her with an awkward smile. Chapter 435. In the 4th floor of the treasure house in the Echo Mountain Range. "Tell me, what do you want me to do to appease my anger?" Although he didn't want Hiruyu to follow him into the 5th floor of the treasure house, it was indeed his fault to use a sneak attack to make her faint. Therefore, Yuhaoran had long been prepared to bear Hiruyu's anger. This, in the face of Yuhaoran, who directly chose to admit defeat and was willing to accept any punishment, Hiruyu, who originally wanted to teach him a lesson, suddenly didn't know what to do. She scolded him fiercely for losing her image as a lady. She beat him fiercely, but she couldn't bear to do it. She wanted to blackmail him fiercely, but she didn't know what she wanted. After thinking about it, Hiruyu, who really didn't know how to teach Yuhaoran a lesson, began to cry angrily and anxiously. "Ryu, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to make you faint just now, but I was too concerned about your safety, so I had to do this. After all, your character is too honest. It's impossible to persuade you to give up following me into the 5th floor of the treasure house with words." Seeing Hiruyu, who was crying like raindrops, Yuhaoran quickly stood up, then squatted in front of her, and explained and pleaded in a low voice. "I promise, no matter what danger I encounter in the future, I will never do this again. Can you not be angry and stop crying? Yuhaoran, remember, I didn't force you to do this, but you promised me willingly." After hearing Yuhaoran's promise, Hiruyu, who was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, suddenly flashed a complacent smile, indicating that all his promises just now had nothing to do with her. Alas! Seeing that he was fooled by Hiruyu, Yuhaoran couldn't help but sigh, and whispered as he helped Hiruyu up. "The ancients didn't deceive me. Only vile people and women are hard to deal with." Unfortunately, after falling into a deep sleep, Hiruyu had recovered a portion of the damage caused by using the secret technique. With her cultivation at the peak of 9th grade Martial King, she clearly heard Yuhaoran's whisper. "Yuhaoran, what did you just say?" Glaring, Hiruyu angrily scolded. "No, I didn't say anything. Yu Haoran, who was startled, quickly waved his hand and explained. Only vile people and women are hard to deal with. How could he Ruyu let Yu Haoran off so easily when he compared her to a villain? But just as she was about to teach Haoran a lesson, an extremely powerful energy fluctuation suddenly came from the fourth floor of the treasury. Yu Haoran and he Ruyu, who were alarmed by the powerful energy fluctuations, immediately looked at the black bear standing in a pile of white powder. Damn, this wastrel! Looking at the pile of white powder beside the black bear, and the dozens of 10th grade spirit stones scattered on the ground, Yu Haoran cursed with a dark expression. Haoran, what's wrong? Hiruyu, who was confused by the black bear's breakthrough and Yu Haoran's cursing, temporarily forgot to look for trouble with Yu Haoran and asked in confusion. The first floor of the treasury had over 1,000,000 spirit stones, and it only allowed this guy to advance by a small grade. Yu Haoran said with heartache as he pointed at the black bear that was continuously advancing. And this is only the breakthrough from the 8th grade to the 9th grade. If it wants to advance to the 4th grade, wouldn't it need to consume over 10,000,000 spirit stones? Hearing Yu Haoran's heartache, although Hiruyu was also shocked by the amount of spirit stones consumed for the black bear's breakthrough, she thought deeper. Since it needed so much energy to advance by a small grade, it meant that the black bear's foundation was very deep, and its potential was even more outstanding. Such a gifted exotic beast, as long as it was properly nurtured, it would definitely become a great help in the future. Therefore, Hiruyu, who was only thinking for Yu Haoran, started to persuade him not to care about the consumption of spirit stones, and to think more about the black bear's strength and potential, as well as the help it could provide him in the future. Seeing that Hiruyu finally stopped pursuing the matter of him knocking it out and secretly complaining about it, Yu Haoran continued to pretend to be indignant, but in his heart, he was secretly relieved. Yu Haoran had helped the black bear advance in grade before, so he knew better than Hiruyu the amount of energy it needed to advance in grade, as well as its own potential. He was only using this method to divert Hiruyu's attention. Humph! Still looking at the black bear with some anger, Yu Haoran said coldly. On account of Ryu's face, I will continue to raise you. When the black bear's aura began to recede, and it calmed down, it quickly shrunk its body to no more than 5 meters, and stood in front of Yu Haoran in an obedient manner, admitting its mistake. Waving his hand, Yu Haoran signaled the black bear with his eyes, and promised with a helpless expression, "All right, don't pretend to be so pitiful. On account of Ryu's face, if I go out to train in the future, I will definitely continue to bring you along." "Master, thank you." The astute black bear hurriedly nodded its head in thanks. "Ryu, let's go." Yu Haoran instructed Hiruyu, signaling the black bear to lead the way. "All right." Without asking what secrets were hidden on the 5th floor of the treasury, Hiruyu gently followed Yu Haoran and left the 4th floor of the treasury. Looking at the wolf's mouth that was closed again, and looking at the 5 jade pendants that were engraved with different mythological beast patterns, Yu Haoran's expression was solemn, and his tone was unquestionable as he instructed. "Ryu, put these 5 jade pendants that open the treasury with me." In this regard, Hiruyu did not object, and directly handed the 5 jade pendants to Yu Haoran. Taking the jade pendants from Hiruyu, Yu Haoran's expression was still solemn as he instructed. "Ryu, in the future, without my consent, you must never step into the Echo Mountain range." "All right." After a little consideration, Hiruyu, who originally wanted to object, saw Yu Haoran's solemn expression, and thought about how he did not mention what secrets were hidden on the 5th floor of the treasury. Hiruyu knew that the Echo Mountain range must be hiding an earth-shattering secret technique, and finally nodded her head in agreement. "All right, take Sister Ryu's body, we will leave the Echo Mountain range, and return to Qingyun Peak." Qingyun Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. "Sister-in-law, I am 9th junior brother's 5th senior brother, and also the senior brother who has the best relationship with 9th junior brother in Qingyun Peak. Looking at the masked Ryu, who had a very hot figure, but a gentle and elegant temperament, Huang Zonghua introduced himself seriously. Ryu was the first to get the news and immediately rushed over. Since you are Haoran's fifth senior brother, you must be the extraordinarily intelligent senior brother, Huang Zonghua. Hearing Huang Zonghua's self-introduction, Ryu praised him without a trace. I have heard Haoran mention you more than once, saying that you are the only person in the 100 Qi Gate who can surpass him in wisdom. Chapter 436. Qingyun Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. Sister-in-law, don't listen to fifth brother's nonsense. Just as Huang Zonghua was proudly bragging, a voice that mercilessly exposed Huang Zonghua's true nature came from the entrance of Hidden Moon Pavilion. Never knowing when to stop, shameless and full of himself. This is the Huang Zonghua you should know. Fourth senior brother, am I as bad as you say? Huang Zonghua immediately complained as he turned his head to look at Qingyun, who was walking into Hidden Moon Pavilion. Moreover, sister-in-law just arrived at Qingyun Peak. Don't you want to give me some face? Fifth junior brother, my evaluation just now already gave you a lot of face. If eldest senior brother heard your flattery in front of sister-in-law, his evaluation and punishment would probably make you want to commit suicide out of shame and regret it so much that you want to die. Qingyun ignored Huang Zonghua's complaints and continued to mock him. Then, he walked in front of Ryu and introduced himself. I am Qingyun, 9th junior brother's 4th senior brother. Ryu greets 4th senior brother. After bowing respectfully, Ryu flattered without blushing or skipping a beat. I heard Haoran mention 4th senior brother before. He said that you are the most easygoing disciple in Qingyun Peak. You don't put on airs with anyone and are the closest to him. It seems that 9th junior brother understands me. Qingyun said with a satisfied smile after hearing Ryu's evaluation. Huang Zonghua, who was standing behind Qingyun, immediately made a disgusted and vomited look in retaliation for his earlier mocking. As if he had noticed Huang Zonghua's small movements, Qingyun immediately turned his head to look. Huang Zonghua reacted quickly and immediately returned to his serious appearance. Not only did Qingyun and Huang Zonghua's mocking and quarreling not make Ryu feel annoyed, she actually liked this warm feeling. At this moment, a joyful and steady voice came from outside Hidden Moon Pavilion. I heard that 9th junior brother brought back a sister-in-law from his mission. As the 2nd senior brother, I should come and visit. Ryu greets 2nd senior brother. After Lu Guangwei entered the Hidden Moon Pavilion, Ryu hurriedly took a few steps forward and respectfully greeted Lu Guangwei. Since she learned that Yu Haoran of Qingyun Peak in the 100 Qi Gate could perform the same transformation secret method as her and forced Gao Luanping, the peak master of the law enforcement peak, to admit defeat, she began to use the financial resources and influence of the Xiangshan bandits to bribe the higher-ups in the 100 Qi Gate so that she could pay attention to and understand Yu Haoran's situation at any time. It was precisely because of her prior attention and understanding that Ryu was also very familiar with the disciples of the Clear Cloud faction. She knew that Yu Haoran treated his 8 senior martial brothers, 2 junior martial brothers, and 1 junior martial sister differently. And 2nd senior brother Lu Guangwei was someone Yu Haoran truly admired from the bottom of his heart, so Ryu didn't dare to slight him in the slightest. Not bad. Even though Lu Guangwei was full of praises, he frowned slightly when he saw the mask concealing his appearance, refusing to face them with his true appearance. However, his frown soon eased. Perhaps she had no choice but to do so. Although Lu Guangwei's frown was fleeting, as an expert who was about to break through to the martial emperor realm, Ryu clearly saw it. She was afraid that Lu Guangwei would be disgusted, so she quickly explained. 2nd senior brother, because Ryu's appearance is a little special, Ryu doesn't dare to take off my mask without Haoran's permission. I hope 2nd senior brother can forgive me. So that's what happened. Lu Guangwei nodded and finally understood why He Ruyu didn't take the initiative to take off her jade mask in front of these senior martial brothers who were closer to Yu Haoran than family. Gong's son Yiming greets ninth sister-in-law. Gong's son Yiming, who had rushed over after hearing the news, greeted He Ruyu while secretly sizing her up. Gong's son Yiming's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Compared to his three senior brothers who had rushed over earlier, he only felt joy and blessings. When Yu Haoran agreed to take charge of the He clan's massacre, Gong's son Yiming was worried that the He twins would threaten his sister. Although the He twins didn't succeed in seducing Yu Haoran in the end, Yu Haoran suddenly brought back a woman who recognized his identity and status. This was unexpected and also a blow to him. At this moment, he didn't dare to tell Yuding the news, fearing that she wouldn't be able to take the blow. After secretly sizing her up, Gong's son Yiming found that the woman brought back by his ninth junior brother not only had a hot figure, but also a temperament that his sister couldn't compare to. You must be the peerless genius that Haoran painstakingly roped in from the ancient town faction, junior brother Gong's son Yiming. Gong's son Yiming's movements were very careful, but they couldn't escape He Ruyu's senses. She knew that her sudden appearance and declaration of her sovereignty, as soon as she returned to Qingyun Peak, would definitely arouse the hostility of Gong's son Yiming and his sister. But love was selfish, there was no such thing as courtesy, and there was no such thing as first come first serve. The final result depended on one's own means. It would belong to whoever could fight for it. Ninth sister-in-law, you flatter me. Compared to the 10 senior martial brothers, Yiming is much worse. Faced with He Ruyu's praise, Gong's son Yiming quickly humbled himself. Hey! How come I don't see junior sister Yuding? He Ruyu intentionally glanced behind Gong's son Yiming and pretended to be surprised and expectant as she asked. I was training with Haoran in a dangerous place and accidentally obtained a few good treasures. I wanted to give some to junior sister Yuding. Replying to ninth sister-in-law, Yuding is currently breaking through to the 5th grade of martial disciple and can't come to see you for the time being. Gong's son Yiming, who was much more experienced than his senior brothers, quickly discovered He Ruyu's hostility towards his younger sister due to the hardships he went through when he was young. Moreover, he also knew the reason why He Ruyu was hostile towards his sister. However, when he thought about how his sister had only been in contact with cultivation for less than 6 days and was about to break through to the 5th grade of martial disciple, he thought that his sister had already lost, but in an instant infinite hope rose in his sister's heart. After all, Yu Haoran possessed the most monstrous potential, and in the future, he would definitely become the most powerful person in the profound sky continent. Whoever could catch up to him in terms of cultivation, whoever could provide him with the most powerful support, would be the one who would have the last laugh. And this person was probably his sister, who also had the most monstrous potential. Gong's son Yiming believed that this mysterious woman in front of him did not have the qualifications to follow Yu Haoran in the future. Thinking of this, Gong's son Yiming, who was originally slightly inferior to He Ruyu because of the blow and disappointment, looked at He Ruyu in high spirits again. Although she did not know why Gong's son Yiming, who was originally in low spirits, regained his fighting spirit, as the leader of the Xiangshan bandits, how could He Ruyu be afraid? Or rather, how could she care about Gong's son Yiming's provocation? Chapter 437. Qingyun Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. Xingjun greets ninth sister-in-law. Just as Gong's son Yiming and He Ruyu were looking at each other provocatively, Wu Xingjun, who was emitting a cold aura, slowly appeared in front of He Ruyu and greeted her with the etiquette of a junior. Brother Xingjun, there's no need to be so polite. He Ruyu hurriedly raised her hands and accepted Wu Xingjun's greeting, not daring to be careless. She knew very well that among the 11 disciples of Qingyun Peak, the one she truly cared about and needed to rope in wasn't the chief disciple, the current sect master of the 100 Qi Gate, Chu Zhongyu. It wasn't Yu Haoran's most respected second senior brother, Lu Guangwei or Huang Zonghua, who claimed to be the closest to Yu Haoran. It was Wu Jingjun, who was born in the same city as Yu Haoran and had joined the 100 Qi Gate at the same time. They were closer than brothers. Only by obtaining Wu Jingjuan's approval would she be considered to have truly entered Yu Haoran's circle. Only then would she be able to successfully capture Yu Haoran's heart within the agreed 3 years. Ninth sister-in-law, where's my senior brother? Wu Jingjun didn't pay attention to He Ruyu's actions. He glanced around and didn't see Yu Haoran's figure. When we returned to Qingyun Peak, your senior brother unexpectedly broke through to the late 6th grade martial master. He is currently consolidating his cultivation in the cultivation room. He Ruyu explained as she turned her head to look at the cultivation room. SSSS. When they heard He Ryu say that Yu Haoran's cultivation had broken through to the late 6th grade martial master, everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. Although they would be shocked by Yu Haoran's breakthroughs every once in a while, this time, it had only been 6 days since he had broken through 5 minor realms in a row. In just 6 days, his cultivation had continued to rise by a minor realm. This made everyone present feel a heavy pressure. Sigh. It seems like the gap between me and senior brother is getting bigger and bigger. When he heard that Yu Haoran's cultivation had broken through to the late 6th grade martial master, Wu Jingjun, who had just reached the peak of the 4th grade martial master, couldn't help but sigh. Then, he walked directly to a place 10 meters away from the cultivation room and sat down cross-legged. He then took out 2 spiritual stones and began to absorb the spiritual qi to cultivate. And Wu Jingjuan's action of seizing every minute and second to cultivate also made the 5 people present blush. Although it was said that talent and potential were given by the heavens, how much of one's talent and potential could be used in the end depended on one's own efforts. Compared to the desperate efforts of Yu Haoran and Wu Jingjun, everyone present felt that they were wasting the talent and potential that God had given them. However, although they felt remorseful, they could not disregard the situation and cultivate on the spot like Wu Jingjun. Therefore, for a moment, the scene fell into a temporary silence. It wasn't until the exhausted Chu Zhongyu brought a few other senior brothers to the Hidden Moon Pavilion that the calm atmosphere was broken. You must be the woman that 9th junior brother brought back. Looking at the masked Hiryu, who had an extraordinary temperament, Chu Zhongyu wasn't as enthusiastic as the other junior brothers. As the chief disciple of Qingyun Peak, Chu Zhongyu had always been in charge of handling the affairs of Qingyun Peak. When he saw the mask on Hiruyu's face and her golden hair, a person's name flashed through his mind. It was an enemy that the 100 Qi Gate had hated for a long time but had always been helpless against. However, whether the woman that 9th junior brother brought back was an enemy of the 100 Qi Gate or not, he still had to wait for Yu Haoran to come out of seclusion and verify it with him face to face. Ryu greets sect leader Chu. When Chu Zhongyu first saw Hiryu, he was filled with hatred and vigilance. This made Hiryu feel strange, and at the same time, her attitude towards him wasn't as polite as the other senior brothers and junior brothers. No need to be so polite. Waving his hand, Chu Zhongyu looked towards the cultivation room and asked in a cold tone. When you introduced yourself, you called yourself Ryu. Because he wasn't sure if the masked woman in front of him was the person in the rumors, Chu Zhongyu didn't rashly acknowledge Hiryu as his sister-in-law and only called her by the name she had introduced herself by. Then I'll call you Ryu. Ryu, why did 9th junior brother suddenly go into seclusion? How long will it take for him to come out? Seeing that Chu Zhongyu didn't directly acknowledge her identity like the other senior brothers, Hiryu was dissatisfied. Of course, she wouldn't be nice to him, and replied coldly. Haoran temporarily broke through to the middle of the 6th grade martial master and is now consolidating his cultivation. As for when he will come out, I'm afraid you've asked the wrong person. Looking at each other, Lu Guangwei and the others present all noticed the hostility between their eldest senior brother and Hiryu. However, no one knew why the two people who had just met for the first time would be hostile to each other. Therefore, although they wanted to resolve it, they didn't know where to start. Inside the cultivation room, slowly opening his eyes, Yu Haoran slowly exhaled the turbid air that had accumulated in his chest. He stopped cultivating and stood up. Originally, with the help of pills and high-quality 5th-grade spirit stones, it wouldn't take nearly a day and a night to eliminate the effects of forcibly breaking through to the next realm. The reason why he had spent so much time was mainly to comprehend the power of law that he had obtained from the 5th floor of the treasury. After nearly a day of recollecting and comprehending, the power of law that was close at hand but far away at the end of the world had already been deeply imprinted in his mind. Now, when his cultivation broke through to the martial saint realm, he would have a 60 to 70% chance of comprehending this special power of law. Pushing open the door and walking out of the cultivation room, Yu Haoran immediately saw Wu Jingjun sitting cross-legged and cultivating. Apart from Gongsun Yuding, all the disciples of the Qingyun faction were standing in the courtyard. Jingjun, don't be in a hurry to cultivate for the time being. Walking to Wu Jingjuan's side, Yu Haoran reminded him. Yes. Putting away the spirit stones, Wu Jingjun hurriedly stood up and then obediently stood behind Yu Haoran. After greeting Chu Zhongyu and the others, Yu Haoran nodded to Gong's son Yiming. Haoran greets senior brothers. 9th junior brother, I have something to say to you. After Yu Haoran had greeted everyone, Chu Zhongyu instructed in a serious tone. After that, he didn't care whether Yu Haoran was willing or not, and directly walked into the pavilion. Glancing at Hiryu, Yu Haoran's eyes revealed a questioning look. Shrugging her shoulders, Hiryu indicated that she didn't know either. Having no choice, Yu Haoran had to step into the pavilion. After Yu Haoran walked into the pavilion, Chu Zhongyu directly took out a disc and activated it with the power of his divine soul. Looking at the disc that was emitting white light, Yu Haoran knew that it was a King's Domain low-grade celestial artifact specially used to block sound. He knew that Chu Zhongyu must have accepted someone's goodwill. Chapter 438. Qingyun Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. According to Yu Haoran's initial plan, Chu Zhongyu had to step down from the position of sect master in 2 to 3 years at most. Now, with the advantage of being the sect master, he could take advantage of it as much as he could. Therefore, Yu Haoran didn't care about Chu Zhongyu accepting the gifts from his subordinate. 9th junior brother, do you know the origin of that woman? Chu Zhongyu asked with a dignified expression after activating the sound-shielding magic tool. I know. Seeing Chu Zhongyu asking about Hiryu's origin, Yu Haoran knew why he wanted to talk to him alone after thinking for a while. After all, as the chief disciple of Qingyun Peak, Chu Zhongyu had been responsible for all the external affairs of Qingyun Peak. He must have some information about the Xiangshan bandit. Moreover, it had been a few days since he took over the position of the new sect master. He would definitely learn about the Mountain Echo Bandits and Hiryu's secrets from the sect's secret book that was specially targeted at the sect master. It was not surprising that he could guess Hiryu's origin. In fact, Yu Haoran never wanted to hide Hiryu's origin when he brought her back to Qingyun Peak. He would not hide her identity as the leader of the Xiangshan bandits from the senior and junior brothers who were like family. Therefore, Yu Haoran answered truthfully. Ryu was originally the leader of the Xiangshan bandits. 9th junior brother, do you know about the grievances between our 100 Qi Gate and the Xiangshan bandits? Hearing Yu Haoran directly point out Hiryu's origin, Chu Zhongyu turned around abruptly and looked at him with a serious expression. His tone even contained a trace of anger as he questioned. I know. Yu Haoran admitted with a nod and was not afraid of Chu Zhongyu's angry gaze. Since you know about the grievances between the sect and the Xiangshan bandits, You still dare to accept her as your woman and dare to bring her to Qingyun Peak. Slamming the stone table, Chu Zhongyu asked loudly. Are you not taking the 100 Qi Gate seriously? Are you not taking me, the Gate Master, seriously? Eldest senior brother, you're taking this sect too seriously now. Although Yu Haoran knew that Chu Zhongyu would definitely be affected by the power and influence of the sect master after becoming the sect master, Yu Haoran had never thought that Chu Zhongyu would fall so deeply that he would forget about the relationship between him and his fellow disciples. However, Chu Zhongyu was his eldest senior brother, and he was the one who pushed his eldest senior brother to the position of sect master. Therefore, although he was very disappointed, he could only patiently explain. Eldest senior brother, it's the previous leaders of the Mount Echo bandit group who have enmity with the sect. Ryu has only been the leader for more than 3 years. During this period of time, our 100 Qi Gate has adopted a conservative plan and has not had any conflict of interest with the Echo Mountain bandit. None of our sect disciples have died in the hands of Ryu. Therefore, the sect has enmity with the Echo Mountain bandits, and it has nothing to do with Ryu. Ninth junior brother, things are not as simple as you think. As long as Ryu has been the leader of the Echo Mountain bandits for a day, then she must bear the crimes committed by the Echo Mountain bandits in the past, and she must accept the punishment of our 100 Qi Gate. Yu Haoran's argument just now sounded reasonable, but as the Gate Master of the 100 Qi Gate, Chu Zhongyu's considerations were different from Yu Haoran's, and he could not accept his explanation just now. Eldest senior brother, even if Ryu has to bear the crimes committed by the Echo Mountain bandits in the past, do you really want to avenge the sect? Do you really not care about my face and sentence Ryu to death? In Yu Haoran's view, the explanation just now was already giving a lot of face to his eldest senior brother. Otherwise, according to his character, he would have turned hostile long ago. However, his eldest senior brother only considered the sect and did not care about his feelings at all. This made Yu Haoran feel very annoyed, and his tone gradually became impolite. Ninth junior brother, affection is affection. The interests of the sect are greater than everything. I will never let go of the opportunity to avenge the sect. As if he did not hear the displeasure in Yu Haoran's tone, Chu Zhongyu said with a strong sense of righteousness. Chu Zhongyu, don't talk about the sect's righteousness. Don't forget how you became the Gate Master. Not only did he not care about his feelings, but he even took revenge on Ryu in front of him. Chu Zhongyu's behavior completely aroused the anger in Yu Haoran's heart. He could not help but call him by his name and remind him loudly. Yu Haoran, I know that I was able to become the Gate Master because of the combined efforts of you and the Peak Master. I will always remember this kindness in my heart. However, as I said just now, kindness is kindness. The interests of the sect are greater than everything else. Chu Zhongyu roared, as if he had been humiliated when he saw Yu Haoran actually call him by his name. If not for the fact that he still remembered Yu Haoran's kindness and was still wary of Yu Haoran's secret transformation technique, he would probably have used his status as the eldest senior brother to teach his disobedient ninth junior brother a lesson. Chu Zhongyu, don't yell at me. Since I, Yu Haoran, have the ability to support you to the position of Gate Master, then I have the ability to pull you down from the position of Gate Master. Seeing that Chu Zhongyu had been completely blinded by the power of the Gate Master, Yu Haoran knew that words alone were useless. He could only use the cold reality to tell him that any status and power were built with one's fist. How dare you! Seeing that Yu Haoran actually had the thought of abolishing his own Gate Master, Chu Zhongyu immediately felt a trace of panic. Although he hadn't been the Gate Master for long, Chu Zhongyu had already become deeply infatuated with the power to control the lives and deaths of millions of people. If he were to give up the position of Gate Master now, Chu Zhongyu believed that he would completely collapse. Chu Zhongyu, have you forgotten who I, Yu Haoran, am? Is there anything in this world that I don't dare to do? Yu Haoran said arrogantly as he looked coldly at Chu Zhongyu. After that, he pointed at Hiruyu who was outside the light barrier, and said with a disdainful expression on his face, "Eldest senior brother, even if I choose to stand by and do nothing for the sake of our relationship, do you think that you can easily take down Hiruyu? To tell you the truth, even if I transform into a large power King Kong ape and use my most powerful staff technique, I still don't have complete confidence in defeating Hiruyu. Just by relying on the already declining 100 Chi Gate." He turned around and pointed at the Elder Peak, Law Enforcement Peak, Rising Dragon Peak, Merit Palace Hall and a Yun Peak in the depths of the sect. His tone was filled with ridicule. "Eldest senior brother, I dare to bet with you that if the 12 elders of the Elder Peak, as well as the peak masters of the various factions, knew of Hiruyu's origins, strength and trump cards, not to mention letting them deal with Hiruyu, it would already be good if they didn't deal with you instead." Chapter 439. Qinyun Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. "Eldest senior brother, I'm not afraid to tell you the truth." Seeing Chu Zhongyu gradually calm down, Chu Zhongyu thought of how he had been completely blinded by power and forgot about the friendship between them. Yu Haoran finally decided to reveal a little of his plan to prevent him from putting more effort into the 100 Chi Gate that could not be saved and would definitely be destroyed in the future. "Back then, the reason why I pushed you to the position of sect master of the 100 Chi Gate was because I wanted you to use this position to sharpen yourself and broaden your horizons. In 2 years at least, 3 years at most, I will think of a way to make you relinquish the position of sect master so that you can wholeheartedly cultivate. After all, Qinyun Peak is our home. The rise of Qinyun Peak is what Master and I truly want to see." Looking at Yu Haoran with a face of shock, Chu Zhongyu never thought that his 9th junior brother would use the position of sect master of the 100 Chi Gate to sharpen himself, broaden his horizons, and increase his experience. Chapter 440. Qinyun Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. "What pressure can I have?" Yu Haoran said arrogantly in the face of Lu Guangwei's teasing. "When I, Yu Haoran, am 20 years old, I don't dare to say that I can comprehend the power of laws and break through to the martial sage realm, but I am confident that I can break through to the 7th grade of martial king." However, everyone present felt that Yu Haoran's slightly arrogant attitude just now was to be expected. After all, with Yu Haoran's current speed of advancement, as well as his talent and potential that were constantly improving, it had been more than 3 years. Perhaps his statement just now was a bit modest. "9th junior brother, sister-in-law, junior brothers, I'm sorry." Just as Yu Haoran and his fellow disciples were discussing how to quickly improve their cultivation without affecting their foundation, Chu Zhongyu, who had finally figured it out after nearly half an hour of thinking, removed the artifact that blocked out the sound, and then came in front of everyone, sincerely apologizing to them. "Eldest senior brother, what are you doing?" Lu Guangwei, who quickly got up, stopped him. "Junior brothers, during this period of time, I have been completely blinded by the power of the sect leader. Whether it was intentional or not, I must have done a lot of things to let you down and even hurt you. Senior brother apologizes to all of you. Eldest senior brother, you didn't do anything to let us down. We are all willing to help you." Huang Zonghua, who was good at persuading, tried to persuade Chu Zhongyu while giving Yu Haoran, who was still sitting cross-legged, a look. However, Yu Haoran didn't get up in the face of Huang Zonghua's look. He just looked straight into Chu Zhongyu's eyes and asked, "Have you thought it through?" "I have." Nodding his head, Chu Zhongyu replied. "Have you thought it through?" "Yes." "How much time have you given yourself?" Yu Haoran raised his voice and continued asking. 2 years. He closed his eyes and a hesitant expression appeared on his face. In the end, the hesitance turned into determination. After opening his eyes again, Chu Zhongyu said in a firm tone, "Willingly?" "Willingly." "Not bad. You didn't disappoint me. The fact that Chu Zhongyu chose to give him the shortest amount of time meant that Chu Zhongyu was aware of the 100 Qi Gate's current situation. It also meant that he knew that all of this was because of him. Therefore, Yu Haoran nodded his head in satisfaction and praised with deep gratification. Eldest senior brother, take a seat. Then, he reached out and pointed at the grass beside him. Yu Haoran nodded and sighed. Eldest senior brother, perhaps you are still unconvinced in your heart. Perhaps you still have some fantasies about the sect. But let me tell you the truth. In at most 2 years, you will discover that the current situation of the sect is far more serious than what I have described. Ninth junior brother, I don't feel any dissatisfaction in my heart, but as you said, I still have a trace of hope for the sect. Chu Zhongyu said with a complicated tone as he turned to look at the sect. After all, the 100 Qi Gate is a second-rate sect that has been passed down for thousands of years. How can it be defeated so easily? Yu Haoran didn't say much about Chu Zhongyu's fantasies about the sect, nor did he reveal any more inside information. He wanted to leave all of this to time and let the ruthless reality pierce through Chu Zhongyu's fantasies. Then, Yu Haoran began to change the topic and didn't talk about sad topics. However, Chu Zhongyu stopped him. Ninth junior brother, I came to find you this time not only to see sister-in-law, but also to find you for a very important matter. Seeing that Yu Haoran was about to change the topic, Chu Zhongyu hurriedly stopped him. What is it? Yu Haoran asked with a frown. Ninth junior brother, have you heard of the Qin Alliance? While explaining, Chu Zhongyu took out a glittering invitation card from his storage bag. It was made of purple gold that was 100 times more valuable than gold. After thinking about it carefully, Yu Haoran realized that he had never heard of the Qin Alliance in his previous life. He took the invitation card from Chu Zhongyu and looked at it carefully. The content of the invitation card was very simple. The Emperor Qin's kingdom would hold a pledge ceremony on the 28th of January, which was the day before the Lunar New Year in the Emperor Qin's kingdom's capital, Xianyang. Eldest senior brother, when was the Qin Alliance established? Which factions are participating? Yu Haoran asked doubtfully as he closed the invitation card made of purple gold. Facing Yu Haoran's question, Chu Zhongyu bitterly smiled and replied. Ninth junior brother, after receiving the invitation card from the Emperor Qin's kingdom's messenger, I looked at the secret letters and information left behind by the previous sect leaders. There was no mention of the Qin Alliance in any of them. After that, I went to visit the 12 elders, vice-sect leader Lai, and the peak leader. They also did not know about the Qin Alliance. After hearing Chu Zhongyu's explanation, Yu Haoran was even more doubtful. After that, he turned his head to look at Hiryu, hoping to get information about the Qin Alliance from the Xiangshan bandit group, which had a lot of connections with the Emperor Qin's kingdom. Unfortunately, Hiryu also shook her head with a doubtful expression. Qin Alliance. He closed his eyes and softly muttered the 2 words, Qin Alliance. He started to think about the development of the Emperor Qin's kingdom in his previous life. In the end, he seemed to have guessed the meaning of the Qin Alliance. He also roughly knew why eldest senior brother and Hiryu did not know about the Qin Alliance. Eldest senior brother, what do you mean? Although he had guessed the reason why the Emperor Qin's kingdom held the Qin Alliance, Yu Haoran did not reveal it. He only asked Chu Zhongyu why he gave him the invitation card. Ninth junior brother, this? Facing Yu Haoran's interrogation, Chu Zhongyu, who had just figured it out and adjusted his mentality, answered embarrassedly. Eldest senior brother, do you want me to represent the 100 Qi Gate and go to Xianyang, the capital of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, to participate in the Qin Alliance? Chu Zhongyu was too embarrassed to say it out loud. Yu Haoran easily guessed his true thoughts, so he asked straightforwardly. Alas! Since Yu Haoran had already guessed his thoughts, Chu Zhongyu did not continue to hide it and explained in detail. It turned out that there had been more than one bloody conflict between the 100 Gate and the Emperor Qin's kingdom because of the limitless border. Although the 100 Gate's strength had declined greatly over the years because of the factional fighting, it had always been in a defensive situation and even in a state of retreat. However, the grievances accumulated over hundreds of years would not disappear just because the 100 Gate took the initiative to retreat. Therefore, after knowing that the participation of the Qin alliance required one to go to Xianyang City, the capital of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, whether it was the 12 elders, Lai Yan or Gao Wanping, they all refused to represent the 100 Gate to participate in the Qin alliance on the grounds that they were in closed-door training to make a breakthrough. Chapter 441. Qingyun Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. Eldest senior brother, putting aside the auxiliary ability of the secret transformation technique, I am only a 6th grade martial master. How can I represent the 100 Gate to participate in the Qin Alliance conference held by the Emperor Qin's kingdom in Xianyang City? Hearing that Chu Zhongyu wanted him to represent the 100 Gate to participate in the Qin Alliance conference in Xianyang City, Yu Haoran's first reaction was to refuse. The Emperor Qin's kingdom was different from the 100 Gate. In the 100 Gate and the affiliated forces of the 100 Gate, with the help of the secret transformation technique, he could act domineeringly and ignore any threat. He could kill people without saying anything. He could do whatever he wanted. However, in Xianyang City, the capital of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, he did not dare to do so. This was because the Emperor Qin's kingdom was a superpower that did not lose to the 7 top sections. As the capital of the kingdom, Xianyang City was a dangerous place where martial grandmasters were as numerous as dogs, martial kings were everywhere, and only martial emperors could barely move. The secret transformation technique that he possessed not only did not have any advantages in Xianyang City, but it could also become a fuse that would arouse the greed of others. Therefore, how could Yu Haoran be willing to put himself in a dangerous situation? 9th junior brother, although your cultivation is only a 6th grade martial master, your identity and status are qualified to represent the 100 Gate. Chu Zhongyu, who had adjusted his attitude, did not want Yu Haoran to take the risk to participate in the so-called Qin Alliance conference in Xianyang City. However, he had no one else to send, so he could only trouble Yu Haoran. After all, Yu Haoran was not only his junior brother, but also the only expert he could rely on now. Because just before I came to find you, the 12 elders and 32 peak masters jointly recommended you to be the deputy sect leader of the 100 Gate. Moreover, deputy sect leader Lai willingly stepped down to the position of second deputy sect leader. Therefore, as the deputy sect leader of the 100 Gate, it is both reasonable for you to participate in the Qin Alliance Conference in Xianyang City. F***CK. When he heard that he was inexplicably elected as the deputy gate master of the 100 Gate, Yu Haoran was so angry that he jumped up and cursed loudly. A bunch of bastards who are even more cunning than foxes. You actually dare to tease yours truly? Looks like you've already forgotten the bloody methods of yours truly, the butcher. At this point, Yu Haoran looked directly at the law enforcement peak and criticized with an indignant expression. There's no need to say any more, this rotten idea was definitely proposed by Gao Wanping. Looks like I have to transform into a large power King Kong ape and personally make a trip to the law enforcement summit. Seeing that Yu Haoran was planning to find trouble with Gao Wanping, and had even transformed into a large power King Kong ape, Chu Zhongyu was shocked. He quickly stood up and pulled Yu Haoran back, and said with a face full of shame, "Ninth junior brother, I'm sorry. It was my idea to nominate you as the vice-sect leader. Originally, Yu Haoran wanted to vent his anger by blackmailing Gao Wanping. However, with Chu Zhongyu's self-admission, Yu Haoran had no target to vent his anger on. Eldest senior brother Yu?" Pointing at the ashamed Chu Zhongyu, Yu Haoran was so angry that he didn't know what to say. Ninth junior brother, don't be anxious and don't be angry. Seeing that the usually eloquent Yu Haoran was so angry that he couldn't say anything, Chu Zhongyu, who knew that he was in the wrong, hurriedly tried to persuade him. When I decided that you would represent the 100 Qi Gate to participate in the Qin Alliance, I had already discussed it with the 12 elders and 32 peak masters. No matter what the Qin Alliance held by the great Emperor Qin Kingdom is, you can fully represent the sect, including the request to become a subordinate force of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom. Yu Haoran sneered and asked. Sure. However, to Yu Haoran's surprise, facing such an excessive request, Chu Zhongyu actually nodded his head in agreement. All of this is Gao Wanping's suggestion, right? After thinking for a while, Yu Haoran immediately guessed that the person who came up with this idea was Gao Wanping. After all, in his previous life, after Gao Wanping replaced Ouyang Haoyu by grafting the demonic skill, he directly joined the Emperor Qin Kingdom and became an official in the Ministry of Justice of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom. In the future, with his outstanding performance, not only did he become an important figure in the great Emperor Qin Kingdom, but he also married the princess of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom. From this point, it could be seen that there was definitely an inexplicable relationship between Gao Wanping and the great Emperor Qin Kingdom. That's right. Nodding his head, Chu Zhongyu admitted. You guys talk first. After reminding them, Yu Haoran began to walk back and forth in the courtyard. As he walked, he thought about the pros and cons of going to Xianyang City. Agreeing to become a subsidiary sect of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom would remove the possibility of conflict with the Emperor Qin Kingdom, which also meant that his safety would not be too big of an issue. However, thinking about the hundreds of years of grudges between the 100 Qi Gate and the great Emperor Qin Kingdom, especially the relatives of the deceased who died in the conflict, he was afraid that they would not easily let him go just because he lost. This meant that although there was no issue with his safety, he would definitely encounter trouble. Moreover, with his personality of not wanting to suffer losses and his style of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, he was afraid that in the end, he would cause quite a stir. He did not know if he would anger the ruler of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom. However, thinking about how if the 100 Qi Gate could become a subsidiary sect of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom, then the tragedy of being wiped out in a few years could be avoided. Shaking his head, Yu Haoran quickly threw this question to the back of his mind. Because no matter whether the 100 Qi Gate was wiped out in a few years, he would take the people of the Qinyan faction and leave the 100 Qi Gate to find a suitable place for the Qinyan faction to truly rise. After thinking about it, Yu Haoran finally decided to agree to his eldest senior brother's request. Firstly, Chu Zhongyu was his most respected eldest senior brother. Now that he was in trouble, as his junior brother, he could not help him. Moreover, half of the trouble that his eldest senior brother encountered was due to him. Secondly, on the way to Xianyang City, he had to pass through a special mountain range. In that mountain range, there was a Saint Realm exotic beast that had reached the peak of the 9th rank of the 4th level. And in the body of that Saint Realm exotic beast, there were the plant insects needed to make the antidote for the 7 insects and 7 flowers powder. Thirdly, the 100 Qi Gate could no longer provide him with any help in terms of cultivation and strength. He needed to continue to increase his cultivation and strength through continuous experience and adventures. However, although he agreed to Chu Zhongyu's request, how could Yu Haoran swallow his anger when he thought about how he had been fooled by the old fellows of the sect for no reason? Therefore, when Yu Haoran returned to Chu Zhongyu's side, he directly put forward his request. Eldest senior brother, it's not impossible for me to represent the sect and participate in the Qin Alliance, but you have to agree to 2 of my requests unconditionally. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about. Seeing that Yu Haoran had finally agreed, Chu Zhongyu patted his chest excitedly and promised, Sure, as long as you are willing to participate in the Qin Alliance, you can raise any request. As the main envoy of the Qin Alliance Conference, logically speaking, I should arrange for 2 deputy envoys to help me deal with some chores. Chapter 442. Qin Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. Yu Haoran had thought it through carefully before proposing Gao Wanping and Gong Yuan as his deputies to accompany him to Emperor Qin's capital city, Xianyang, to participate in the Qin Alliance Conference. Not only did Gao Wanping possess the cultivation of a 5th-grade martial king, he also had an unclear relationship with Emperor Qin. He could help him deal with some troubles that could not be brought to the table. Although Gong Yuan's cultivation was not as high as Gao Wanping's and was only at the peak of 9th-grade martial great master, he was proficient in Fushi's 8 trigrams reasoning technique and could avoid some troubles and dangers in advance. In the entire 100 Qi Gate, only they were the most suitable candidates to accompany him to Xianyang City. Of course, the above reasons were only used by Yu Haoran to explain why he had chosen them. In fact, the real reason for choosing them as deputies was revenge. He wanted to take revenge on Gao Wanping for tricking him into becoming the deputy leader and then represent the 100 Qi Gate to participate in the Emperor Qin's Qin Alliance Conference in Xianyang City. He wanted to take revenge on Gong Yuan for using Runyanda and Kong Yongao to plot against him in the Blue Moon Mystery Realm. Although Chu Zhongyu had patted his chest loudly and promised that he would agree to any request that Yu Haoran made, his expression immediately turned ugly, as if he had eaten a fly when he heard the 2 candidates that Yu Haoran had mentioned. Gao Wanping was the first peak master of the first faction of the 100 Qi Gate. His power and influence were not inferior to that of the deputy leader, Lai Yan. Even as the leader, he had to listen to his suggestions. How could he possibly accept Yu Haoran's request? Gong Yuan had always been the number 1 genius of the 100 Qi Gate before Yu Haoran had revealed his demonic potential. He was also the most popular candidate for the next leader of the 100 Qi Gate. More importantly, Gong Yuan himself was proficient in Fushi's 8 trigrams deduction technique. He often helped the sect's disciples solve some troublesome matters. His influence among the sect's young disciples was even greater than that of Yu Haoran. Chu Zhongyu did not think that he could persuade Gao Wanping and Gong Yuan to accompany Yu Haoran to attend the Qin Alliance Conference in Xianyang City. 9th junior brother, can we change the candidate? Chu Zhongyu asked cautiously. Eldest senior brother, I'm sure you know very well what kind of place Xianyang City is. I'm just a grade 6 martial master inner sect disciple, yet I'm willing to go to Xianyang City to participate in the Qin Alliance Conference. Can't Gao Wanping, the peak master of the law enforcement peak, and Gong Yuan, the core disciple, solve the problems for the sect? Yu Haoran complained. 9th junior brother, don't worry. I will definitely convince these 2 people to accompany you to Xianyang City to participate in the Qin Alliance Conference as vice envoys. Yu Haoran's indignant complaints made Chu Zhongyu finally understand. Although he was the sect master of the 100 Qi Gate, Gao Wanping and Gong Yuan were also disciples of the 100 Qi Gate and his subordinate. For the sake of the sect's development and safety, he had already convinced his 9th junior brother. Then, as a subordinate, Gao Wanping, and as a disciple, Gong Yuan, what reason did they have to reject his request, or even request? Seeing that his eldest senior brother had finally made up his mind to use his authority as the sect master to order Gao Wanping and Gong Yuan, Yu Haoran finally felt a little better. However, considering Gao Wanping and Gong Yuan's strength and status, he could not let his eldest senior brother face the challenge alone. Thus, he warned him in a domineering manner. Eldest senior brother, if Gao Wanping and Gong Yuan do not agree, then tell them that I, Yu Haoran, will personally talk to them. However, I will decide on the way to talk. All right. Chu Zhongyu nodded excitedly. Personally talk. According to Yu Haoran's lawless character, it would not be just a matter of talking. Thus, his attitude made Chu Zhongyu secretly sigh in relief. The second request, no matter what excessive request the Emperor Qin's kingdom makes, under the premise that we are safe, I will definitely agree to it. Yu Haoran raised the second request. Ninth junior brother, I have already said this point. As long as we can protect the foundation of the 100 Qi Gate, even if we become a subordinate force of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, we will still be able to accept tributes every year and coming to court every year. After hearing Chu Zhongyu's attitude, Yu Haoran couldn't help but frown. Although the 100 Qi Gate's strength had been greatly reduced over the years due to internal strife, they could still accept such harsh demands of tributes every year and coming to court every year. Could it be that the 100 Qi Gate had already fallen to such an extent? Ninth junior brother, the predicament that the 100 Qi Gate is facing now is not something that can be explained in a few words. Seeing Yu Haoran's frown, Chu Zhongyu explained with a bitter smile. Anyway, when you go to Xianying City to attend the Qin Alliance conference, you will definitely pass by the border battlefield. At that time, you can personally go and take a look and know the true situation of the sect. It was precisely because of the predicament that the 100 Qi Gate was facing now that Chu Zhongyu had listened to Yu Haoran's instructions and decided to only be the sect leader for 2 years. Forget it, the predicament of the sect has nothing to do with me. I am not in the mood to care about it. The reason why he frowned just now was because the extent of the loss of the sect's strength was beyond his expectations. He didn't care too much about the life and death of the sect. Then, he raised the third request. According to what I know, in the back mountain of the Senior Statesman's Peak, there is a 7th-rank 3rd-grade Yiyun spiritual tree. The 7th-rank 3rd-grade Yiyun spiritual tree blooms once every 150 years, and there are 36 flowers. It bears fruit once every 150 years, and there are 18 fruit. It ripens once every 150 years, and there are a total of 9 fruit. Now, according to the calculation of time, the Yiyun spiritual tree has reached the maturity stage. Eldest senior brother, go and tell the 12 old fellows at the Senior Statesman's Peak that 5 Yiyun spiritual fruits will be my reward for representing the sect to attend the Qin Alliance conference. This. Facing Yu Haoran's third request, Chu Zhongyu was once again in a difficult position. Unlike Gao Luanping and Gong Yuan, who could use the sect and identity to suppress them and force them to accept the orders of the deputy sect leader. However, facing the senior statesmen who had sacrificed their lives for the sect, other than persuading them with emotions and reasoning, no other forceful method would work. However, Chu Zhongyu was not confident that he could persuade those stubborn senior statesmen to be willing to take out more than half of the Yiyun spiritual fruits as the reward for his 9th junior brother's mission. Eldest senior brother, you don't have to be in a difficult position. Seeing that Chu Zhongyu was in a difficult position, Yu Haoran knew that his previous request was a little overboard. The Yiyun spiritual fruit was a top-notch spiritual fruit that specifically targeted the soul and willpower. If a peak 9th grade martial master took a Yiyun spiritual fruit when breaking through to the martial arts grandmaster realm, not only could it increase the chances of breaking through to the martial arts grandmaster realm by 70%, it could also increase the speed and strength of the spiritual condensation when breaking through to the martial arts grandmaster realm. Originally, Yu Haoran had planned to use some more precious elixirs to exchange for 1 or 2 Yiyun spiritual fruits with the Senior Statesman's Peak. However, he had been cheated by the old fellows this time and could make use of this opportunity to ask for the Yiyun spiritual fruit for free. You can tell the 12 old fellows at the Senior Statesman's Peak that if they do not agree to my request, Yu Haoran, or whoever is willing to represent the sect leader to attend the Qin Alliance conference can go. Anyway, Yu Haoran, will definitely not go. Or, I will personally go and ask for the Yiyun spiritual fruit as the reward for carrying out the mission for the sect. All right. In order to deal with the bunch of stubborn old fellows at the senior statesman's peak, they might really need Yu Haoran's shameless and overbearing method. Chapter 443. 100 Chi Gate, Deep in the Mountains. Black Bear, are you sure this is the lair of the giant white wolf? Yu Haoran asked suspiciously as he pointed at the narrow cave in front of him that was only 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. After all, when he first encountered the giant white wolf in the primeval forest, it was a huge creature that was as tall and as big as Black Bear. As a cave for rest and recuperation, how could it be built in such a constricting manner? Master, I am very sure that this cave in front of us is the lair of the white wolf. Moreover, before the fight for the Divine Lotus, I had a good relationship with Old White, and I have been a guest in the cave more than once. There is a whole other world in the cave. After hearing Black Bear's detailed explanation, Yu Haoran was suddenly interested and hurried towards the cave. Black Bear, who was standing behind Yu Haoran, shrunk his body size and followed closely into the cave. Not bad, that white wolf really knows how to enjoy life. After entering the cave, Yu Haoran discovered that the environment in the cave was just as Black Bear had said, a whole other world. At the top of the cave, which was hundreds of meters high, there were dozens of fist-sized luminous pearls that lit up the entire cave. In the cave, which was tens of thousands of square meters, there were countless exotic flowers and plants. In the middle of the cave, there was a huge stone bed made of countless high-quality spirit stones, which highlighted the luxurious side of the giant white wolf. Just as Yu Haoran was carefully examining the cave of the giant white wolf, Thaling, who was also using divine thought to observe the cave, suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Thaling, what important discovery did you find? Hearing Thaling's exclamation, Yu Haoran quickly asked. Yu Haoran, in the southeast direction, there are colorful flowers blooming. Without explaining the reason for his surprise, Thaling directly instructed. According to Thaling's reminder, Yu Haoran directly used a body movement technique and appeared in front of the flowers. Then, he lowered his head and observed carefully. Not only did he not find anything strange about the flowers, but the flowers planted in this place were all the most ordinary things. Other than being used to appreciate them, they had no value at all. Yu Haoran, clean up a part of the flowers first and see what is at the roots of the flowers. Seeing that Yu Haoran's targets were only the eye-catching flowers, the realm spirit hurriedly reminded him. Although the flowers in front of him were not poisonous, the cautious Yu Haoran still took out a sword from his storage ring, and then used the sharpness of the sword to clean up an open space. Then, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. That was because what provided nutrients for the flowers wasn't soil, but a carcass. It was the carcass of an exotic beast that wasn't very big and had never been seen before. Thaling, what's going on? Yu Haoran asked doubtfully, pointing at the exotic beast's corpse in front of him. Whether it was wild beasts, exotic beasts, or humans, if the corpse was not disposed of in time, flowers and weeds might grow with the nutrients of the corpse's flesh and blood. However, although the colorful flowers in front of him were only ordinary things, there were so many varieties that they did not look like they grew randomly. Instead, they looked like they had been deliberately planted. However, even if the white wolf had deliberately planted them, why did it plant these ordinary flowers? Yu Haoran, clean up all the flowers on this exotic beast's corpse. Thaling did not answer Yu Haoran's question and continued to instruct. Nodding, Yu Haoran turned his head and called out to He Xiong, who had been staring at the stone bed. Okay. He Xiong, come here. Master, what are your orders? He Xiong asked after reluctantly moving his gaze away from the stone bed and scurrying in front of Yu Haoran. Try your best to clean up these flowers without touching the exotic beast's corpse. Yu Haoran instructed, pointing at the colorful flowers in front of him. Understood. He Xiong answered and began to carefully clean up the flowers on the exotic beast's corpse. Taking advantage of He Xiong's free time to clean up the flowers, Yu Haoran began to ask Thaling what was going on. Yu Haoran, this exotic beast in front of you has an extraordinary origin. It's an Earthcry beast that contains the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, Tianguo. The ancient divine beast, Tianguo, is not only powerful, it can also swallow the sun, moon, and stars, as well as absorb mountains and oceans. It's a top divine beast second only to the 9 great divine beast kings. As for the Earthcry beast that contains the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, although it can't swallow the sun, moon, and stars like its ancestor, it can gather the power of the stars in a large area. At this point, Thaling gestured for Yu Haoran to take a closer look at the Earthcry beast's head, which had already been cleaned out by He Xiong. Yu Haoran, look at the Earthcry beast's eyes. Aren't they always open? Shifting his position slightly, Yu Haoran took a closer look at the Earthcry beast's eyes. Immediately, he felt as if his mind had sunk into a boundless sea of stars, and his soul had the urge to leave his body. He was so frightened that he hurriedly closed his eyes. Thaling, why do I feel like the Earthcry beast's eyes are like 2 stars? After opening his eyes again, Yu Haoran carefully recalled what he had felt just now and couldn't help but ask in horror. It doesn't seem like it. The Earthcry beast's eyes are stars. Thaling suppressed his excitement and answered calmly. It's just an exotic beast with the bloodline of an ancient divine beast, but its eyes can condense stars. Thaling, are you sure you're not joking? Although Thaling was absolutely certain that the Earthcry beast's eyes had condensed stars, Yu Haoran didn't think that was possible at all. First of all, one could tell how big and heavy a star was, and how terrifying the power it contained just by looking up at the starry sky. Second of all, the Earthcry beast in front of him was only an Emperor Realm exotic beast that had just broken through to the 5th rank, whether in terms of size or aura. How could it possibly have the power to condense stars? Yu Haoran, when have you ever seen me joke about something like this? Thaling retorted unhappily in the face of Yu Haoran's doubts. Not to mention, how much do you know about stars? Thaling, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Yu Haoran hastily apologized when he heard Thaling's angry rebuke, and gestured for him to continue his introduction. However, Thaling ignored Yu Haoran's apology. He waited quietly until He Xiong had cleaned up all the flowers before gesturing for Yu Haoran to jump directly onto the Earthcry beast's carcass. Yu Haoran, go straight to the Earthcry beast's head. Thaling gestured. Thaling ordered after arriving at the Earthcry beast's head in a few steps. Change it to a low-grade Emperor Realm sword. Yu Haoran took out the only low-grade Emperor Realm sword he'd obtained from the Echo Mountain bandits after listening to Thaling's instructions. Chapter 444. I'm sorry. Maybe I drank some fake wine last night. I've had a terrible headache since this morning. I had to force myself to write the first chapter. It's much better now, so I'll have to postpone the rest of the chapters to the afternoon and evening. My sincere apologies. Deep in the mountains, inside the White Wolf's cavern. Clang! Yu Haoran didn't dare to use his low-grade Emperor stage sword because he wasn't familiar with the beast's background. He didn't want to damage the treasure inside the beast's head. Therefore, he only relied on the sword's sharpness to try and cut open the beast's head. However, when the low-grade Emperor stage sword stabbed into the beast's head, it bounced off the beast's sturdy skin and bones. Yu Haoran, as a unique beast that can condense the power of the stars, the earthly cry beast's defense is far stronger than its cultivation. Thaling couldn't help but mock Yu Haoran when he saw that Yu Haoran wasn't using his Dantian's energy and was only relying on his low-grade Emperor stage sword. If it wasn't for the fact that the Earth Cry beast has been dead for a long time and that its defensive capabilities have been weakened to the extreme, I wouldn't have even told you about its existence, let alone breaking its head open with a mere 6th-grade martial master like you. In the face of the pagoda genie's sarcasm, Yu Haoran could only smile awkwardly. He hurriedly channeled all the energy in his dantian into the sword, and then viciously slashed at the earth-cried beast's head. Rip! Accompanied by the sound of flesh and blood being torn apart, the low-grade Emperor stage sword, infused with energy close to that of a martial ancestor, cut open the beast's head. However, to Yu Haoran's surprise, not a single drop of blood flowed out of the wound. Thaling wasn't surprised at all and continued to remind him. Yu Haoran, keep going until you cut open the beast's head. After hearing Thaling's reminder, Yu Haoran took out a few top-notch elemental energy recovery elixirs. As he continued to circulate his elemental energy, he slashed at the wounds that had already been cut open. At the same time, he used the elixirs to recover his rapidly depleted elemental energy. After a total of 9 slashes, the Earth-Cry beast's head was finally chopped in half, revealing Bai Ye's brain matter inside the beast's head. Yu Haoran, jump into the brain. Then, follow my instructions and extract the Earth-Cry beast's eyes. Thaling continued to instruct when he saw that the Earth Soul beast's head had been completely cut open. In the Blue Moon's secret realm, he even dared to jump into the quagmire formed by the excrement of exotic beasts, let alone the brain matter that looked disgusting but wasn't actually dirty. Although the Earth-Cry beast's body was not big, only 1/3 of the black bear's size, its head was very big, occupying 1/3 of its entire body. Therefore, if he wanted to extract the pair of eyes from its eye sockets, not only did he have to jump into the brain matter, he also had to immerse himself in the brain matter. Seeing that Yu Haoran had already disappeared into the brain matter, Black Bear, who was standing beside the Earth-Cry beast, revealed an expression of admiration. After all, as an exotic beast, Black Bear knew that he might not be able to do the same as Yu Haoran when faced with such a situation, ignoring the disgust and nausea and directly diving into the brain matter. Fortunately, the brain matter was not too far away from the eye socket. Yu Haoran quickly extracted the pair of eyes from the Earth-Cry beast's eye sockets, then quickly left the brain matter and left the Earth-Cry beast's corpse. Thaling, these are the eyes that you said had already condensed into stars. Without having time to clean off the brain matter on his body, Yu Haoran's voice was vaguely suppressing his anger as he questioned. In Yu Haoran's imagination, the eyes of the Earth-Cry beast, which possessed the ability to condense stars, had already completely condensed into stars, just as Thaling had said. Then, the eyes that had completely condensed into stars should have displayed extraordinary abilities, not only in terms of their weight, but also in terms of the energy contained in the eyes. And the result? Not only were the eyes as light as those of ordinary exotic beasts, the soul-pulling force he felt when he looked into the Earth-Cry beast's eyes had also completely disappeared. This situation could only mean one thing: Thaling had made a mistake in his judgment. The Earth-Cry beast's eyes had not condensed into stars at all. Yu Haoran, haven't you heard of the saying, the more precious a treasure is, the more reserved its strength? Thaling reprimanded Yu Haoran, who was desperately suppressing his anger. Yu Haoran, do you know why the White Wolf hid the Earth-Cry beast's corpse in the cave? Do you know why the White Wolf planted ordinary, nameless flowers on the Earth-Cry beast's corpse? The reason it did that was because the Earth-Cry beast's eyes, which had already started condensing stars, wouldn't stop condensing stars even if it died. If the White Wolf hadn't used the cave and flowers as a cover, the Earth-Cry beast would have fallen into the hands of other exotic beasts long ago. If it wasn't for the battle for the Celestial Lotus, which led to the White Wolf's death under your staff technique, I'm afraid that it would have used the newly condensed star to directly break through to the 4th stage and become the first Saint Stage beast in this mountain range. Yu Haoran was speechless in the face of Thaling's machine gun-like criticism. He did not know how to refute it. Originally, according to the time the Emperor Qin's Qin Alliance Conference was going to be held, and the distance between the 100 Qi Gate and Xianyang City of the Emperor Qin's Qin Alliance Conference, he was supposed to depart for Weiyang City the next day. However, He Xiong suddenly suggested that Yu Haoran sweep through the 10 Emperor Realm exotic beasts' cave dwellings in the depths of the mountain range. Not only were the 10 exotic beasts at rank 5, but they had all died during the battle for the immortal lotus in the primeval forest. He was very tempted. That was why he had asked He Ruyu to bring Wu Jingjun out first. He planned to use He Xiong's flying speed to catch up with them after he was done sweeping through the Emperor Realm exotic beasts' cave dwellings. Currently, apart from the six-tailed white fox and the white wolf's cave dwelling, he had not found any valuable treasures in the 8 cave dwellings he had swept through so far, apart from some spirit stones and spirit herbs. This made him feel very depressed. It was because of the depression he had accumulated for a long time that he was so angry when he saw the Earth Cry beast's eyes, which had no energy fluctuations at all. Thaling took a deep breath when he heard Yu Haoran slowly explain the reason for his anger. Not only did he forgive Yu Haoran for doubting him, he also planned to let Yu Haoran experience how extraordinary the Earth Cry beast's eyes were through personal experience. Yu Haoran, I'll teach you a secret method to refine magic tools. With this method, you can directly refine the Earth Cry beast's eyes into magic tools that can assist your cultivation. When that happens, you'll know how precious these eyes are. The secret method to refine magic tools was directly transmitted into Yu Haoran's sea of consciousness through his divine thought. After greeting He Xiong, Yu Haoran sat cross-legged on the stone bed with his legs bent. He began to experience the secret method Thaling taught him. Chapter 445. Deep in the mountains, inside the White Wolf's cave. In order to cultivate the weapon-refining arcana taught by Thaling, 2 conditions had to be met. The first condition was that one's cultivation and physical body grade had to be equal. Just based on this point alone, it was almost enough to wipe out nearly 99% of the cultivators. Compared to the time and pain needed to break through the physical body grade, and the increase in strength after breaking through the realm, it was much easier and more powerful to achieve a breakthrough in cultivation. Therefore, the vast majority of cultivators, other than the martial warrior realm where they had to raise the grade of their physical body, would focus on cultivating their physical body. After reaching the martial master realm, most cultivators would pursue breakthroughs in their cultivation. This also led to many experts who had reached the martial emperor realm and martial sage realm only having a physical body grade of martial grandmaster or martial king. However, Yu Haoran was different. At the beginning of his cultivation, with Thaling's reminder and help, as well as his 100 years of cultivation experience in his previous life, he had pursued dual cultivation. Now, his physical body and cultivation were basically equal, which fulfilled the first condition of cultivating the weapon-refining arcana. The second condition was that one had to have cultivated the astral dough formula before being qualified to cultivate the weapon-refining arcana. To be more precise, the weapon-refining arcana was actually an auxiliary arcana of the astral dough formula, and Yu Haoran happened to fulfill this condition. Therefore, after understanding the 2 basic conditions of cultivating the weapon-refining arcana, he began to calm his mind and concentrate, using the arcana to refine the earth-chiming beast's right eye that Thaling had specially pointed out. As the arcana formed a special force, the earth-chiming beast's right eye, which was originally light and weightless, instantly became as heavy as a star. If not for the fact that Yu Haoran had used the arcana to activate the eye himself, which offset nearly 99% of the weight, the sudden increase in weight would have crushed him into a meat patty. As the weight of his right eye increased, a surge of star power that was dozens of times, or even hundreds of times, denser than the star power that he had condensed using the White Wolf's blood essence that contained the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, Howling Sky Wolf, combined with the star-gathering formation, almost broke and crushed his bones. His internal organs were also forcefully displaced by the star power that instantly emerged. Fortunately, the the body of a 6th-grade martial master, had a very strong resistance against the pressure of the bones and the damage caused by the displacement of the organs. Therefore, he himself did not suffer much damage. He hurriedly used a secret technique to reduce the amount of star force that appeared in his right eye. Once his body was able to withstand the amount of star force, the injuries in his body not only instantly healed, but his body also easily advanced to the peak of 6th-grade martial master. When his body advanced to the peak of grade 6 martial master, Yuhaoran stopped using the secret technique and cut off the star force that appeared in his right eye. Then, he slowly opened his eyes. Afterwards, he closed his eyes again and his body formed by his willpower entered the victor. He formally bowed and apologized to Thaling, who was standing on the first floor of the victor. "Thaling, I'm sorry. I've wronged you." "It's fine," Thaling said understandingly as he waved his hand. "Yuhaoran, I know that the Qin Alliance conference in Xianyang City has put you under a lot of pressure. Not only do you need enough time to enter Xianyang City in advance to understand the situation, but you also urgently need treasures that can increase your strength to increase your ability to protect yourself. However, you can't be too hasty. Otherwise, going too far is as bad as not going far enough. You may hurt yourself." In the face of Thaling's advice, Yuhaoran nodded his head. While he accepted the advice humbly, he couldn't help but sigh in surprise. "Thaling, the star force contained in the right eye of the earth-chiming beast is simply a timely help to me. With sufficient star force, not only can I break through to the peak of grade 10 martial master in the shortest amount of time, but I can also use the constantly increasing grade of my body to stimulate the blood essence of exotic beasts that contains even more power. If I can obtain 1 or 2 drops of blood essence of an exotic beast that has reached grade 4 by the time I reach Xianyang City, then I can transform into a Saint Realm exotic beast. Although I'm limited by my own understanding of the realm and can't use the power of law of a Saint Realm exotic beast, the strength of a grade 4 exotic beast is enough for me to protect myself in Weiyang City." Hearing Yuhaoran's plan to take the next step, Thaling nodded his head in satisfaction. However, when he thought of the terrifying energy contained in the blood essence of a Saint Realm exotic beast, Thaling felt that he had to remind Yuhaoran. "Yuhaoran, although the star force in the right eye of the earth-chiming beast can help you break through to the peak of grade 10 martial master in a short amount of time, the terrifying energy contained in the blood essence of a grade 4 Saint Realm exotic beast is beyond your imagination. Therefore, if you don't encounter a fatal danger, I don't approve of you using the blood essence of a grade 4 Saint Realm exotic beast right now." "I know." Nodding his head, Yuhaoran's consciousness returned to his body. Then, he stopped cultivating and got up. After getting up and leaving the stone bed, Yuhaoran asked, "Thaling, other than the earth-chiming beast's pair of star-condensing eyes, are there any other precious treasures in the White Wolf's cave?" On the north side near the wall, other than a few spiritual herbs of good quality, the rest are just ordinary goods. "Hey Xiong, now this stone bed made of spiritual stones is for you." After hearing Thaling's introduction, Yuhaoran raised his head and glanced at the north wall of the cave. Then, he turned his head and ordered He Xiong. "Master, you're really giving this stone bed to me?" He Xiong asked in disbelief. Unlike the first floor of the Xiangshan bandits' treasure house, most of the spirit stones were grade 9 and grade 10. Although there were many of them, they were not very precious and Yuhaoran would not pay attention to them. However, in this stone bed made of spiritual stones, the lowest grade spiritual stone was grade 1 of grade 7, and there was even a small portion of grade 6 spiritual stones. He Xiong could not believe that so many high-quality spiritual stones were given to him without any hesitation. "TSK, just some grade 7 and grade 6 spiritual stones are nothing to me." In the face of the shock on He Xiong's face, Yuhaoran was very disdainful, but he also gave his own guarantee. Xiong, if your cultivation reaches the peak of grade 5, grade 9, and you have more than a 70% chance of breaking through to grade 4 Saint Realm, then I'll give you a grade 1 of grade 4 spiritual stones to help you break through to grade 4. Master, thank you. Not only will I give you hundreds of thousands of high-quality spiritual stones, but I'll also give you a grade 1 of grade 4 spiritual stones to help you break through to grade 4 smoothly. Chapter 446. The fifth chapter would be updated after 9 o'clock. In the depths of the mountain range, inside the White Wolf's cave. In a flash, he appeared in front of the northern wall of the cave and immediately saw the few spiritual herbs that were around the 7th level. Moreover, these spiritual herbs were just right for the few types of pills that he was preparing to refine recently. They were the supplementary herbs that he needed. After happily putting away the spiritual herbs, Yuhaoran stood up and glanced at the cave. After making sure that he didn't miss anything, he planned to rush to the last cave, which was also the cave of the six-tailed white fox that he was looking forward to the most. However, when he saw the black bear crawling on the stone bed and planning to devour the stone bed that was paved with hundreds of thousands of spiritual stones on the spot, he was instantly angered. Black Bear, I don't have much time to stay here. If you don't have a way to store spiritual stones, then I'll temporarily put away these spiritual stones for you. After I'm done with the Qin Alliance Conference and return to Qinyan Peak, I'll return these spiritual stones to you. All right. After hearing Yuhaoran's suggestion, although the black bear was a little unwilling, it could only helplessly nod in agreement when it remembered that Yuhaoran was certain that he couldn't stay here for long. Seeing the black bear's reluctant look, and how it had only crawled on the stone bed for a short while and had already devoured the spiritual qi from hundreds of spiritual stones, Yuhaoran knew that its own comprehension had probably long surpassed its own level. Now it just lacked the energy to increase its own cultivation. After thinking carefully for a while, Yuhaoran took out a storage bag and directly threw it to the black bear. Black Bear, this is a storage bag that's about 30 square meters in size. First, take a portion of the spiritual stones that you need for your daily cultivation. I'll help you store the rest of the spiritual stones first. When the spiritual stones in the storage bag are used up, I'll immediately replenish them for you. Master, thank you. As a 5th rank 9th rank Emperor Realm exotic beast, the black bear naturally knew how to refine storage pouches. With the strength of its spirit, it instantly left its mark in the storage pouch and took away over 10,000 7th rank 1st to 3rd rank spirit stones. Yuhaoran nodded in satisfaction when he saw that the black bear only used the lowest grade spirit stones to increase its cultivation. Then, he asked Thaling to help him store the rest of the spirit stones into the victor. Then, Yuhaoran walked out of the White Wolf's cave. Master, because the relationship between the White Wolf and Six-Tailed is not bad, their cave abodes are not too far apart. After leaving White Wolf's cave, Xiong pointed at a hill not far away. It was less than 100 meters high and was covered with pine trees. That hill is the lair of the six-tailed white fox. Black Bear, hurry up and sweep through that old fox's cave, then go and meet up with Ru Yu and Jingjun. Nodding, Yuhaoran used his movement technique and rushed toward the hill not far away while reminding Xiong. He took out 9 spiritual stones from the storage bag and threw them into the bear's mouth. Then, Xiong followed closely behind Yuhaoran as he rushed toward the hill. Master, this is the entrance to the six-tailed white fox's cave abode. Xiong explained as he pointed at the narrow entrance that was about 1 meter high and covered by pine trees. One could vaguely see the bottom of the pine trees. Let's go. Yuhaoran instructed as he used his origin energy to destroy the pine trees covering the entrance. Yuhaoran, wait a moment. However, just as Yuhaoran reached the entrance of the cave and was about to enter, the pagoda spirit in his sea of consciousness suddenly reminded him. Thaling, what is it? Yuhaoran hurriedly took 3 steps back and asked cautiously. as expected of the Green Hill Arctic fox known for its intelligence and cunning. It actually set up an unexpected trap at the entrance to its own cave abode, Thawling said with a face full of admiration. A trap! Hearing Thawling mention a trap, Yuhauran lowered his head to take a closer look. He immediately discovered that a type of poison toothgrass was growing around the narrow entrance, containing a potent poison. Not only did the poison toothgrass contain a potent poison, its sharp teeth could even cut through the flesh of a peak Class 5 or Class 9 exotic beast. If Thawling hadn't discovered and warned him in time, he and He Xiong would definitely have been injured by the poison toothgrass teeth. Moreover, with the speed at which the poison toothgrass poison spread, he would have died without a doubt if he had taken any precautions. Thawling, I'll have to trouble you now. Patting his chest with lingering fear, Yuhauran took out his low-grade Emperor sword and destroyed the poison toothgrass growing around the cave entrance. After that, he bent down and entered the cave, asking Thawling to use his divine sense to observe the situation. Don't worry, I'm here. After responding, Thawling immediately used his divine sense to its limit and spread it into the six-tailed Arctic fox's cave abode. Yuhauran, let's go back. When Thawling's divine sense entered the cave abode, he was immediately stunned by the empty space before him. Afterwards, he recalled the six-tailed Arctic fox's strange and fickle personality and immediately realized that it hadn't run away immediately after he injured it. Instead, it had hidden in the dark and observed Yuhauran. After confirming that Yuhauran had no intention of sweeping through the cave abode for the time being, he must have taken all the treasures in the cave abode, including the white wolf and the other 9 fifth-level Emperor Realm beasts. Otherwise, it was impossible for there to be nothing valuable in the 10 caves. Therefore, he didn't want Yuhauran to waste any more time and hurriedly reminded him. Just as he bent down and passed through the narrow passageway and was about to reach the cave abode of the six-tailed white fox, Yuhauran heard the pagoda spirit's warning. Just like the pagoda spirit, he guessed the six-tailed white fox's method. Once again, Yuhauran had been beaten to the punch. Although Yuhauran was furious, he quickly calmed down and accepted reality when he considered the fact that he had not collected his spoils of war in time and had been taken advantage of by the six-tailed white fox. After reminding the black bear, Yuhauran turned around and went back the way he came. Yuhauran, you must leave the six-tailed Arctic fox to me when you kill your way into the Qingqiu Arctic fox's nest, Thawling said through gritted teeth after Yuhauran left the narrow passage and returned to the hills. Ever since I, Thawling, was born, I've never been schemed against by anyone. Yuhauran calmly persuaded Thawling when he heard the hatred in Thawling's gritted teeth. Don't be angry, Thawling. Although the cave abodes of the 5th-level Emperor Realm beasts were swept by the six-tailed Arctic fox in advance, the Earthcry beast's pair of starry eyes is enough to make up for those losses. Moreover, I'm mainly responsible for not sweeping through these caves in time. So, you don't have to be so angry about this. Yuhauran, I was just angry for a moment. It's fine now. Thawling waved his hand in Yuhauran's sea of consciousness, indicating that his anger had subsided. Then, he reminded, Yuhauran, it's almost time to part ways with your woman. Since this mountain range no longer has any value, why don't you meet up with her now? Black Bear, use all your strength and bring me to meet up with Ruyu. Even if Thawling hadn't reminded him, Yuhauran would have left immediately after sweeping through all the caves. Chapter 447. The Giant Sword Sect was one of the third-rate sects affiliated to the 100 Chi Gate. What was different from the affiliated sects like the Heart Moon Sect, Meteor Sect, and Ancient Town Sect was that the Giant Sword Sect was very strong due to their geographical location being closer to the center of the profound sky continent. Within the sect, there were almost 20 martial monarchs. It was about the same as the number of martial monarchs the 100 Chi Gate had. If it wasn't for the fact that the Giant Sword Sect lacked a rank 7 martial monarch who could defeat everyone, they would have been able to break away from the 100 Chi Gate and become an independent sect. However, although they were still an affiliated sect of the 100 Chi Gate in name, in reality, the Giant Sword sect had already become an independent sect. The 100 Chi Gate could not do anything to the Giant Sword sect and could only allow them to develop on their own. A few hundred miles away from the Giant Sword sect, in front of a dense forest used for elite disciples to train, dozens of Giant Sword sect disciples wearing elite and inner court disciple uniforms were surrounding a man and a woman. "Little girl, do you know where this is?" Among the dozens of Giant Sword sect disciples, there was an elite disciple who had just broken through to the martial ancestor realm. He had a lewd smile on his face as he looked at the masked woman with a head full of golden hair. "Ninth sister-in-law, let me kill them." Seeing that the Giant Sword sect disciple in front of him actually dared to tease his most respected senior's sweetheart, Wu Jingjun, who was already filled with killing intent due to his bloodthirsty physique, immediately released an almost tangible killing intent. "Jingjun, I've heard Howren introduce you before. I know that your talent and potential are outstanding. I also know that your special bloodthirsty physique can increase your strength. However, your current cultivation and strength are not enough to deal with martial ancestor realm experts." Faced with Wu Jingjuan's request, at the same time Hiryu shook her head and refused, she also explained in detail. However, as the former leader of the Echo Mountain Bandits, Hiryu was also a decisive person. Faced with someone who dared to tease her, how could she easily let him go? "Jingjun, there are a total of 56 people surrounding us. Among them, there are 18 Martial Ancestor Realm disciples and 38 Martial Master Realm disciples. The 18 Martial Ancestor Realm people belong to me. Do you have the confidence to deal with 38 Martial Master Realm opponents?" Based on the enemy's strength and Wu Jingjuan's own methods, Hiryu asked worriedly. She then thought about how close Wu Jingjun and Yu Haoren were, as close as brothers. After all, among the 38 martial masters, 19 of them are 7th grade martial masters and above. Ninth sister-in-law, in fact, my personality is very similar to senior brothers. The stronger the opponent, the more excited we will be, and the more we can stimulate our own potential. Furthermore, ninth sister-in-law, you can rest assured that I have the means to protect myself. Even a martial ancestor realm expert would not be able to easily injure me, let alone an opponent at the peak of the 9th grade martial master realm. In response to Hiryu's concern, Wu Jingjun said in high spirits. When she saw Wu Jingjuan's excitement and bloodthirstiness when facing opponents who were far stronger than him, which was exactly the same as Yu Haoren's reaction, Hiryu finally understood why the relationship between the two brothers was so deep. Alright, then let's compete and see who can kill all the opponents first. Since Wu Jingjun was not afraid of opponents who were far stronger than him, then why should Hiryu, who had absolute strength, be afraid? Therefore, Hiryu, whose pride had been aroused, directly proposed a bet. Ninth sister-in-law, unless you suppress your strength to the 1st grade martial ancestor realm, I will not make a bet with you. Wu Jingjun, who had directly activated his bloodthirsty physique and origin power, rushed forward with a murderous aura towards an opponent at the peak of the 3rd grade martial master as he responded to Hiryu's bet. You are as cunning as that little bastard Haoren. Wu Jingjuan's ridicule caused Hiryu to not know whether to laugh or cry. She also immediately charged towards the martial ancestor realm opponent. How dare you? Do you know who we are? Seeing that Wu Jingjun and Hiryu not only directly attacked, but also instantly killed the opponents in front of them, an early-stage 4th grade martial ancestor realm disciple from the Giant Sword sect hurriedly shouted and threatened. We are the genius disciples that the Giant Sword sect has carefully nurtured. Since you dare to kill a genius disciple, then you will have to bear the bloody revenge of our sect's experts. Noisy! Hiryu, who liked to fight head-on, hated opponents who relied on the power behind them to threaten her. Thus, after she shouted in annoyance, her body flashed and appeared in front of the disciple who had just threatened her. Her opponent did not even have time to take out his weapon before his body and divine soul were shattered by her. Even an early-stage 4th grade martial ancestor realm senior was not a match for the masked woman. How could these disciples, who had not even reached the 4th grade martial ancestor realm, be her match? Thus, all the disciples who had reached the martial ancestor realm and could use their own cultivation to fly quickly soared into the sky and escaped towards the sect. You want to escape from me, the Black Widow? Dream on. Seeing the 11 martial ancestor realm disciples soar into the sky, Hiruyu coldly laughed. She used her martial technique to materialize 11 jade-like palms and sent them towards her opponent, who was fleeing for his life at lightning speed. Not good. At the beginning, Hiruyu had only used the strength of her body to attack. Everyone present did not discover her true strength. However, after using her martial skill to create the origin power palms, her true cultivation was immediately exposed. The cultivation of a peak 9th grade martial king. Seeing that Hiruyu's true cultivation was at the peak of 9th grade martial king, the disciple with the cultivation of peak 4th grade martial ancestor among the disciples that were fleeing for their lives knew that the situation was bad. He knew that with their strength and speed, it was simply impossible for them to escape from a peak 9th grade martial king expert. Thus, this disciple immediately took out a signal flare from his storage pouch. Before the jade palms could land on him, he directly detonated the signal flare. Boom! Seeing the signal flare fly into the sky and explode with multicolored lights, Hiruyu's expression slightly changed. Soon after, she flashed and appeared beside the martial master disciples. With a few punches and kicks, she killed the few 9th grade martial masters that surrounded Wu Jingjun. Then, she grabbed his arm and quickly explained as she brought him towards the dense forest ahead. Jingjun, in at most 10 seconds, the giant sword sex experts will arrive. Let's quickly retreat. Audacious. After killing our giant sword sex elite disciples, you still want to escape? You're looking down on our giant sword sect too much. Perhaps Hiruyu's luck was too bad. Just when the peak 4th grade martial ancestor realm disciple detonated the signal flare, an elder from the giant sword sect happened to pass by. Chapter 448. Giant Sword Sect in front of the dense forest. Long golden hair, Azura mask, peak 9th grade martial king cultivation. After seeing Hiruyu's appearance and her exposed cultivation, the giant sword sex martial king elder, who was blocking in front of the dense forest, immediately thought of a person's background. You are the head of the Echo Mountain Bandits, the Black Widow revered by the 18 bandits. 9th sister-in-law, I didn't expect you to have such a unique nickname. Hearing the giant sword sex martial king elder shout out her nickname, Wu Jingjun could not help but frown and mock her. Hiruyu was originally the head of the Echo Mountain Bandit. When they first met, Yu Haoran had already introduced her in front of everyone. As for Hiruyu's past, other than Chu Zhongyu, who cared about it at the beginning due to his identity as the sect leader, the other disciples of the Qinyan faction did not care. This was because in their opinion, as long as Yu Haoran liked her, they would not object even if Hiruyu was the daughter of a demonic path giant, not to mention the head of the Echo Mountain Bandit. However, what Wu Jingjun did not expect was that Hiruyu actually had a nickname, Black Widow, which was not very good. After all, the word widow represented that Hiruyu was not pure. The word widow with the word black in front showed that she was a vicious and merciless person who did not even recognize her own family. Thus, Wu Jingjun was worried that Yu Haoran had been tricked by Hiruyu to the point that he was willing to let her be his woman. Jingjun, the nickname Black Widow is just a method used by enemies who cannot do anything to me to slander me. It is just like how your senior brother is secretly called the Butcher. Please don't misunderstand. Hearing the trace of mockery in Wu Jingjuan's tone, Hiruyu quickly explained, afraid that he would misunderstand and affect her relationship with Yu Haoran. Ninth sister-in-law, I don't care what kind of nickname you have. I also don't care what kind of person you were in the past. However, I hope that you can treat me Yu Shixiang well. In the face of Hiruyu's explanation, Wu Jingjuan's tone was still full of doubt. Because I, Wu Jingjun, can tolerate anything. The only thing I can't tolerate is seeing Yu Shixiang get hurt and deceived. Jingjun, don't worry. Even if your senior brother takes the initiative to abandon me in the future, I will not do anything to let him down. Otherwise, my soul will be destroyed. In the face of Wu Jingjuan's warning, Hiruyu knew how to explain herself. The misunderstanding that had already formed couldn't be resolved with just a few words. Therefore, while she made a promise to Wu Jingjun in the form of an oath, she looked murderously at the giant sword sect elder who had exposed her and caused Wu Jingjun to misunderstand her. Old man, you're courting death. As she gnashed her teeth and cursed, Hiruyu instantly disappeared from where she stood. Following that, with the speed of the peak of the profound rank, she instantly turned into tens of Hiruyu. Like a storm, they fiercely attacked the giant sword sect elder. Black Widow, my giant sword sect and the Echo Mountain Bandit group have no grudges in the past. Why do you want to kill our giant sword sect's elite disciples? As he blocked Hiruyu's storm-like attacks, the giant sword sect elder loudly questioned. But as she faced the questioning of the giant sword sect's martial monarch realm elder, not only did Hiruyu not give any explanation, after she shouted, Black Widow, the speed and power of her attacks became even faster and stronger. Although Hiruyu only had the cultivation of the peak of the 9th rank martial king, her monstrous potential as well as the many years of bloodshed caused her to have the strength to challenge those of a higher rank. So, as he faced the all-out attacks, the giant sword sect's martial monarch realm elder, who had been defending the entire time, quickly fell into a disadvantageous position. At the same time, his body also started to unceasingly be injured. Black Widow, the reason I've been tolerating everything is not because I'm afraid of you. It's just that I don't want to have any misunderstandings with the Echo Mountain Bandit group behind you. After his left shoulder was heavily struck by Hiruyu's palm, the giant sword sect's martial monarch realm elder instantly angrily rebuked. Old guy, I've already left the Echo Mountain Bandit group. I'm not the head of the Echo Mountain Bandit group, nor do I have any connections with the power behind the bandit group. So, you don't need to give me any face. As she faced the rebuke of the giant sword sect's martial monarch realm elder, Hiruyu directly stated her current situation to prevent him from calling her Black Widow. Since it's like this, I'll let you have a taste of my giant sword technique. After hearing Hiruyu state her current situation, the giant sword sect's martial monarch realm elder instantly felt the feeling that was binding him instantly and completely disappear. At the same time, a huge sword that was 3 times bigger than a normal sword appeared in his hand. Sword breaks mountains and rivers. Relying on his origin power that was far superior to Hiruyu's, after forcibly pushing back his opponent, Wu Zhen directly leaped into the air and roared. Soon after, the long sword in Wu Zhen's hand instantly became tens of times bigger. At the same time, the golden origin power that was unique to the metal attribute body caused the entire long sword to emit a dazzling golden light. After image, facing the huge golden sword that was quickly chopping down, Hiruyu's expression did not change at all. Her upper body slightly shook and a shadow rushed out from her body as if it was a clone. Heartbreak. The shadow that rushed out from Hiruyu's body appeared in front of Wu Zhen, who was in the air like lightning. Before he could react, a white and tender hand directly pressed against his chest. Boom! The huge sword that was flickering with golden light directly cut Hiruyu in half. After that, it heavily slammed into the ground without reducing its might, causing the entire dense forest to instantly emit a deafening roar. Following the deafening roar was Wu Zhen's miserable cry as he spat out blood. Phew! Seeing Hiryu slowly fall to the ground without any change in her expression, Wu Jingjun could not help but let out a sigh of relief. When Hiryu and Wu Zhen fought, they both used the power of a martial king. This caused Wu Jingjun, who was only a grade 4 martial master, to be unable to clearly see the entire process of the fight. He also did not know who had the advantage. However, when the long sword that was flickering with golden light was chopping towards Hiryu, he clearly saw it. When he saw Hiryu facing the long sword that was flickering with golden light, and not only did she not dodge, but she was also cut in half, he was so frightened that he almost rushed forward. Luckily, Hiryu, who was cut in half, not only did not spurt out blood, she instead turned into a ball of origin power and disappeared. This made him realize that Hiryu must have relied on her speed to avoid the opponent's attack. When he saw the giant sword sex martial king elder spit out blood and was instantly heavily injured, he realized that Hiryu had the upper hand in the fight just now. He could not help but let out a sigh of relief. After all, the pressure of a martial king was not something that a peak grade 4 martial master like him could withstand. Chapter 449. Giant Sword Sect in Front of the Forest. Old man, didn't you always call me Black Widow? Now I'll let you have a taste of my Black Widow's skills. Just now, she had relied on her lightning-fast speed to not only easily dodge the attack of the giant sword, but also heavily injure her opponent in an instant. Although it seemed easy, only Hiryu knew the actual situation. As a martial king expert whose soul was about to reach the great perfection realm, how could she use speed to dodge the lock of her opponent's martial skill when she attacked? The reason why she had been able to rely on her speed to block the attack of the long sword was because she had used a secret technique. This secret technique used 1/10 of her spiritual energy and 1/3 of her origin power to successfully dodge the lock of her opponent's martial skill. In the end, her sneak attack was successful. Although she looked normal now, in reality, her consumption of origin power was not inferior to her opponent's. Therefore, Hiryu planned to cut the Gordian knot quickly. After killing the other party, she would immediately leave with Wu Jingjun to avoid being trapped by the other martial emperors of the giant sword sect. Her body shook slightly. Even though she had used all her strength, she did not reduce the speed of her attack and instantly appeared in front of Wu Zhen. "You want to kill me? Dream on." Seeing Hiryu appear in front of him like lightning, Wu Zhen laughed sinisterly. Immediately after, a mouthful of blood essence mixed with spiritual energy and origin power condensed into a blood shield in front of him. At the same time, he quickly retreated and exploded a jade pendant. Wu Zhen's series of actions caused Hiryu's expression to change. This was because she had not thought that Wu Zhen would be so decisive. He had used half of his spiritual energy and origin power to condense a blood shield that was not inferior to his own cultivation level. Furthermore, he had used a special method to inform the experts of the sect. "Let's go." Without having time to shatter the blood shield in front of her, Hiryu appeared in front of Wu Jingjun in a flash. Then, she brought him directly into the forest. Unfortunately, just as she was about to bring Wu Jingjun into the forest, she was blocked for the second time. Furthermore, it was a stronger martial king elder of the giant sword sect who had blocked her. Seeing the second elder of the giant sword sect blocking her, Hiryu's expression instantly became serious. Although her demon-level potential gave her the ability to challenge opponents of a higher level, as her cultivation level increased, the difficulty of challenging opponents of a higher level would also decrease. With her cultivation, which was about to break through to the martial emperor realm, she could at most kill experts who had just broken through to the martial emperor realm, defeat experts at the peak of the first-grade martial emperor realm, and draw with experts at the early stage of the second-grade martial emperor realm. However, for the time being, she was no match for experts above the middle stage of the second-grade martial king realm. However, the martial emperor who was stopping her from entering the forest was an expert at the peak of third-grade martial emperor. She would be lucky if she could protect Wu Jingjuan's life, let alone fight against him. Wu Jingjun also saw the opponents who were trying to stop them from escaping into the forest. He glanced at He Ruyu's serious expression and immediately knew that they were in big trouble. It was even possible that their lives were in danger. Therefore, Wu Jingjun quietly took out a special signal flare and detonated it while the other party's attention was on He Ruyu. Coldly looking at Wu Jingjun, the expert at the peak of the third-grade martial emperor realm only sneered. Although the expert at the peak of the third-grade martial emperor realm didn't attack Wu Jingjun, his gaze, which contained a divine sense attack, had caused Wu Jingjun to be seriously injured in an instant. PFFF! Wu Jingjun couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood as his mind was instantly injured. Quick, take it! Due to Wu Jingjuan's sudden detonation of the signal flare, He Ruyu was temporarily distracted, causing her to be unable to stop the opponent's divine sense attack in time. In the end, it caused Wu Jingjuan's mind to be seriously injured. Therefore, she quickly took out an elixir that could heal one's mind and helped Wu Jingjun consume it. Then, she looked at the other party with a murderous look. Thaling, the star power that emerged from the Earth Cry Beast's right eye contains a strong Yin force, which is very similar to the star power emitted by the lunar star. More than 3,000 miles away from the forest where He Ruyu and Wu Jingjun were trapped, Yu Haoran was sitting cross-legged on the back of the black bear. While consolidating his physical body, which had just broken through to the 7th-grade martial master level, he was also discussing the differences between the star power formed by the Earth Cry Beast's eyes with Thaling in his mind. Then, does the star power formed by the Earth Cry Beast's left eye contain the solar star power? That's right. Seeing that Yu Haoran had already guessed the two different stars formed by the Earth Cry Beast's eyes, Thaling nodded and couldn't help but remind him. Yu Haoran, the solar star power is different from the lunar star power. Not only does the solar star power contain more power, but it is also more destructive. Before your cultivation reaches the level of a martial emperor, you must not absorb the power of the sun from the Earth Cry Beast's left eye. Otherwise, the violent energy contained within the power of the sun will directly destroy your body and soul. I'll remember that. Originally, he had wanted to try and see if he could borrow the solar star power from the left eye to speed up the breakthrough of his physical body. However, Thaling had instructed him to quickly cut off the connection with the Earth Cry Beast's left eye in the storage ring. He was secretly relieved. Thaling, you said the White Wolf. Just as Yu Haoran wanted to continue learning more about the star power formed by the Earth Cry Beast's eyes, a signal flare suddenly shot up and exploded thousands of miles away. His expression changed. Oh no, Ryu and Jingjun are in danger. Although the distance was a little far, the signal flare that Wu Jingjun had detonated had come from him. Therefore, as soon as he saw the signal flare explode, Yu Haoran knew that He Ruyu and Wu Jingjun, who had rushed to Xianying City ahead of time, were in trouble. Black Bear, use all your strength and rush to the area where the signal flare exploded as fast as you can, Yu Haoran ordered in a low voice, suppressing the anger in his heart. Yes, master. Black Bear instantly refined the spiritual stone that he had just put into his mouth. He rushed to the area where the signal flare exploded at a speed 10 times faster than before. Thaling, use your divine sense to check for me. Find out who's tired of living and dared to touch my woman and brother, Yu Haoran. Grabbing tightly onto Black Bear's fur, Yu Haoran hurriedly asked Thaling for help in order to understand Hiryu and Wu Jingjuan's situation as soon as possible. It's like this. Black Bear's speed was much faster than lightning, and the divine sense of a martial venerable was even faster. Therefore, the pagoda spirit explained to Yu Haoran, using its divine sense to roughly understand what had happened in the forest. Chapter 450. Giant Sword Sect in front of the dense forest. Am I calling you the head of the Echo Mountain bandit group or the Black Widow who kills people like flies? Seeing Hiryu's gloomy expression, the peak third-grade martial monarch of the Giant Sword Sect mocked her with an unusually relaxed tone. Or perhaps it is a new title for you, who has turned over a new leaf. Hiryu. Hiryu took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the nervousness in her heart. She said her current title with an indifferent expression. My name is Wu Qingyuan. I am the third elder of the Giant Sword Sect's senior elder peak. The peak third-grade martial monarch of the Giant Sword Sect did not look down on Hiryu because she was no longer the head of the Echo Mountain bandit group. He also did not fall out with Hiryu because of her cold attitude. Wu Qingyuan introduced himself in a more formal manner. Soon after, he pointed at the 30 over corpses behind Hiryu and Wu Zhen, whose aura had fallen to the martial monarch realm because he had overdrawn his spirit and origin power. Hiryu, how did my Giant Sword Sect's disciples and the 12th elder offend you for you to be so ruthless? Wu Qingyuan, do you need me, Hiryu, to tell you what kind of character your sect's disciples have? Hiryu also turned her head to look at the disciples that she and Wu Jingjuan had killed. She mocked with a disdainful expression. You even dared to take liberties with me, a woman who is wearing a mask and whose true appearance is unknown. I believe that the surrounding women with some beauty would not be able to escape from the evil hands of your Giant Sword Sect disciples. The reason why I killed them was to vent my anger for myself, and also to take revenge for the innocent women around me. Black Widow, don't make irresponsible remark. My Giant Sword Sect is still a righteous sect. The sect's disciples are all kind people who abide by their duties. How could they do something that humiliates the sect? I think that you, Black Widow, are the beastly one and want to use my Giant Sword Sect's disciples to vent the killing intent in your heart. Hearing Hiryu slander the character of the Giant Sword Sect's carefully nurtured genius disciples, Wu Zhen, whose aura had fallen to the peak 9th grade martial king, quickly defended himself and shouted loudly. Since the moment I withdrew from the Echo Mountain bandits, the 3 words Black Widow have been my reverse scale. Whoever dares to call me Black Widow, I will annihilate his entire sect. When Hiryu saw that Wu Zhen kept referring to her as Black Widow, as if he was constantly reminding her of her past humiliation, she threatened him with a face full of murderous intent. 12th Elder, there's nothing for you to do here. You can return to the sect to recuperate for now. Wu Qingyuan reminded Wu Zhen to stop him from framing Hiryu. 3rd Elder, it's just that I've overdrawn too much of my soul and origin energy, causing my cultivation level to drop temporarily. I only need to replenish it with medicinal pills and spirit stones to recover. There's no need to return to the sect to heal. In response to Wu Qingyuan's reminder, Wu Zhen took out some pills and spirit stones while indicating that he didn't need to return to the sect. The reason why he didn't leave was because he was too familiar with Wu Qingyuan's lustful personality. As the saying goes, a crooked stick will have a crooked shadow. The genius disciple that the Giant Sword Sect had carefully nurtured dared to take liberties with Hiryu mainly because of Wu Qingyuan's influence. As a result, although the Giant Sword Sect's overall strength had increased quickly, their reputation had been getting worse and worse. Therefore, he was worried that Wu Qingyuan would be greedy for Hiryu's beauty and let her off in the end. That way, he would be able to timely remind and stop Hiryu. Slightly frowning, Wu Qingyuan looked at Wu Zhen with displeasure, but he didn't say anything. Although Wu Zhen's cultivation and strength were inferior to his, Wu Qingyuan's identity and status were not inferior to his. He also didn't have the authority to order Wu Zhen to listen to his orders. After that, he put away his displeasure and spoke to Hiruyu with a serious expression. Hiruyu, just as the 12th elder said, our giant sword sect is still a righteous sect. Our sect's disciples will definitely not do things that bring shame to the sect. Therefore, you must pay the price for the crime of slaughtering my giant sword sect's disciples. Oh, I wonder what kind of price Elder Qingyuan wants me to pay? Coldly looking at Wu Qingyuan, Hiruyu forced herself to put on an unfathomable appearance. Actually, her heart was filled with helplessness and regret. It was different from Yu Haoran. As long as his body could withstand the impact of the essence blood, as long as there was enough essence blood, he could continuously use the transformation secret technique. However, the transformation secret technique she had was different, because she only had one drop of the non-woven bird's essence blood. Although the drop of non-woven bird's essence blood was not a one-time consumable item and could automatically absorb the spiritual chi of the world to recover the consumed energy, it still required a month to completely recover. This also caused every time she used the transformation secret technique, she had to wait a month before she could use it again. Otherwise, the four protectors wouldn't have been able to control nearly half of the Echo Mountain Bandits' power. Moreover, at the start, when she was teased by those elite disciples, if she directly used the strength of a peak 9th rank martial king and slaughtered them in the shortest amount of time, then brought Wu Xingjun away, she definitely wouldn't have been trapped by them. It's very simple. As long as you follow me back to the sect, then accept the investigation of our giant sword sect's law enforcement peak. If the result of the investigation is that our giant sword sect's elite disciples are in the wrong, then I, Wu Qingyuan, will represent the sect and personally apologize to you. However, if the result of the investigation is that you, Hiruyu, are in the wrong, then you have to obediently accept the punishment of our giant sword sect. Afraid that Hiruyu wouldn't agree to his request, Wu Qingyuan hurriedly guaranteed. However, seeing that you're a woman and that you were once the head of the Echo Mountain Bandits, the power behind you is tangled and complicated. Even if you accept the punishment of the sect, at most you'll be locked in the dungeon for a few years. What if I don't agree? Hiruyu coldly smiled in response as she took out a red pill from her storage ring. If you don't agree, then I can only personally capture you. Although Hiruyu's action of secretly taking out the pill was very covert, how could it be hidden from Wu Qingyuan's divine sense? When he saw that the red pill that Hiruyu secretly took out was the blood soul pill that consumed 10 years of her life in exchange for 10 times her strength, Wu Qingyuan's expression suddenly changed. At the same time, he directly used his peak 3rd rank martial king soul and yuan power to condense a giant hand to grab Hiruyu, preventing her from taking the pill that increased her strength. Too late. Although Wu Qingyuan's reaction was very fast and the timing of his action was also very timely, compared to the speed at which Hiruyu could take the pill with a raise of his hand, he was still a bit slow. Damn it! Seeing that Hiruyu had already delivered the red blood soul pill to her mouth, Wu Qingyuan secretly cursed and sped up the attack speed of the giant hand. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that the pill had yet to take effect and quickly capture Hiruyu. Oh! Chapter 451. Giant Sword Sect in front of the forest. Accompanied by a resonant dragon roar, a flood dragon about 40 meters long, accompanied by a violent storm, quickly rushed towards the giant palm that was capturing Hiruyu. Humph! Although the appearance of the flood dragon was shocking, Wu Qingyuan found that the flood dragon was only close to the martial ancestor realm. It was not a threat at all. Hiruyu, who had already put the red blood soul pill to her mouth and was about to swallow it, heard the loud roar of the dragon. She immediately stopped taking the pill and turned her head to look with joy. Boom! The flood dragon, which was more than 40 meters long, was shattered by the powerful force contained in the giant palm the moment it came into contact with it. Hundreds of meters away in the air, Yuhauran's expression changed slightly when he saw that the flood dragon he had transformed into using the 7 changes of the flood dragon didn't cause any trouble to the expert at the peak of the 3rd grade martial royal realm. The giant palm was still reaching toward Hiryu. Then he patted Black Bear's back and gave him a tempting order. Black Bear, if you can seriously injure that person with 1 punch, I will reward you with 155th grade 1st grade spirit stones. Master, watch me. Even without Yuhauran's reward, Black Bear would have listened to his orders and used the strength of a 5th grade 9th grade martial royal realm expert. However, with the reward of a 5th grade 1st grade spirit stone, Black Bear immediately had the urge to go all out. He overdrew a part of his potential and the power of his bare fist reached the peak of the 5th grade 9th grade martial royal realm. Seeing the Yuan power flood dragon shatter upon contact, Wu Qingyuan sneered in disdain. After that, he no longer cared about who had used the martial skill. Instead, he planned to capture Hiryu alive as soon as possible and remove the mask on her face. He wanted to see if her appearance was really as the son of the Count of the Emperor Qin Kingdom had said, that she had a peerless appearance that could make all men go crazy. Just as Wu Qingyuan's giant palm was about to grab Hiryu, a sense of extreme danger welled up in his heart. As a peak 3rd grade martial royal realm expert, Wu Qingyuan's reaction was very fast. He immediately cut off the connection between him and the giant palm and quickly retreated. He turned his head to look for the source of the fatal threat. When he saw a bear paw covered in black fur coming at him at a speed 10 times faster than lightning, his expression changed. After that, he connected his mind to his dantian, and a palm-sized shield instantly grew in size, blocking in front of him. It also happened to block the direction of the bear fist's attack. Boom! Unfortunately, although Wu Qingyuan took out his defensive magic weapon in time, the shield was only a middle-grade King's Domain defensive magic weapon. As for the rapidly approaching bear paw, its power had already reached the peak of 9th grade martial emperor. With such a great disparity in strength, even a mid-grade martial king magical shield was shattered. The bear fist, which had consumed less than a third of its strength, landed heavily on Wu Qingyuan's chest. Puff! As the bear fist heavily smashed into Wu Qingyuan's chest, he was like a kite with a broken string, flying more than 10 meters into the air. After spitting out more than 10 mouthfuls of blood, he fell heavily to the ground and fainted. Ryu Xingjun, are you all right? Just as the black bear's bare fist was at the peak of the 9th grade of the 5th rank, Yuhauran used the 7 changes of the flood dragon to transform into a flood dragon and rushed directly to Hiryu and Wu Xingjun, who were in front of the dense forest. However, when he stood in front of Hiryu and saw the blood soul elixir that she didn't have time to put away, his face instantly darkened. Give me the blood soul elixir. Yuhauran stretched out his left hand and ordered without hesitation. No, this is my life-saving trump card. Shaking her head, Hiryu refused to hand over the blood soul elixir. At the same time, she put the elixir into the storage ring with her divine thought. Whether it's the consumption of one's lifespan or the overdraft of one's divine soul, this elixir is the worst in the world. Yuhauran's expression changed when Hiryu flatly refused and put away the blood soul elixir. However, when he thought of Hiryu's unreasonable character, Yuhauran knew that if he couldn't give her a good reason, she would never hand over the blood soul elixir. Therefore, he could only use an elixir that had the same effect but would not harm the body in exchange for the blood soul elixir in Hiryu's hands. I happen to have a few elixirs that can increase one's strength by a few times, a dozen times, or even 100 times. Moreover, This kind of elixir that can be exchanged for greater strength will only consume a large number of spiritual stones. Really? The side effect of exchanging for greater strength was that it would consume a large number of spiritual stones. The elixir that Yu Haoran had just mentioned had piqued Hiruyu's interest. After all, when he had treated Rui, Yu Haoran had already displayed his amazing alchemy skills. You don't have to give me the blood-soul elixir for now. After I refine the soul elixir, you can make your own choice. No matter how nice his words were, he didn't know that he had seen it with his own eyes. Therefore, in order to avoid being questioned by Hiruyu, Yu Haoran planned to let her make her own choice after he had refined the elixir that could be exchanged for the blood-soul elixir. Okay. Haoran, if the elixir that you refine can be exchanged for half the strength of the blood-soul elixir, then I will give you all the remaining 3 blood-soul elixirs that I have, Hiryu promised. It's a deal. After they had both made the vow, Yu Haoran's attention was focused on Wu Jingjun, who was pale and still had a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Jingjun, are you all right? Yu Shixiang, I'm fine. Sensing that Yu Haoran had noticed the blood stain at the corner of his mouth, Wu Jingjun quietly wiped it away and indicated that he was fine. Haoran, Jingjun was injured by Wu Qingyuan, who was at the peak of the 3rd grade martial royal realm and was blown away by the black bear. He used his divine thought to injure Jingjuan's mind. Although Wu Jingjun indicated that he was fine, Hiryu didn't want Yu Haoran to misunderstand that she didn't protect him properly, so she quickly explained. They dared to have designs on my woman, they dared to injure my brother, Yu Haoran. If the giant sword sect doesn't pay a price that satisfies me this time, then I will let them experience the bloody methods of a butcher. After hearing that Wu Jingjun was injured by a peak 3rd grade martial royal realm expert from the giant sword sect, Yu Haoran was so angry that he laughed. After that, he took out a few elixirs that could be used to heal the mind and threw them to Wu Jingjun. Then, he turned around and walked toward Wu Qingyuan, who had been blown away. At this moment, Wu Jin, whose aura had dropped to the peak of the 9th grade martial king realm because he had overdrawn his divine soul and origin power, saw Yu Haoran suddenly appear and the 59-meter-tall black bear stomping on the ground. He quietly retreated a few steps and then slowly rose into the air. Chapter 452. Giant Sword Sect in front of the dense forest. Haoran, leave him to me. Hiryu also sensed that Wu Jin had quietly escaped. Her beautiful face immediately turned cold and her voice was filled with killing intent as she spoke. Don't! Seeing that Hiryu was about to chase after the escaping martial king, Yu Haoran quickly stretched out his hand to stop her. Haoran, what are you doing? Hiryu looked at Yu Haoran with dissatisfaction and asked in confusion. After all, once Wu Jin escaped back to the giant sword sect, it would be impossible to kill him. Ryu, if that person doesn't escape back to the giant sword sect, we will lack a reason to barge into the giant sword sect. Yu Haoran said with a smile as he patted Hiruyu's lily-white hand. Haoran, although the giant sword sect is only a subsidiary sect of the 100 Qi Gate, they have the advantage of time and geography, as well as the ulterior motives of some powers. The current giant sword sect's true strength is not inferior to the 100 Qi Gate. With just you and Heixiong, I'm afraid it's not enough to intimidate the martial king experts of the giant sword sect. Make them obediently admit defeat and surrender. Hearing that Yu Haoran planned to use Wu Jin, who had just escaped back to the sect, as an excuse to barge into the giant sword sect, Hiryu was shocked and quickly advised against it. After all, the giant sword sect had already reached the peak of the 3rd-rate sections. Apart from themselves, no one knew what methods they were hiding. She was worried that Yu Haoran, who had barged into the giant sword sect, would encounter danger. Ryu, do you know why the giant sword sect, whose overall strength is not inferior to the 100 Qi Gate, has been unable to become a second-rate sect? Yu Haoran asked mysteriously in response to Hiruyu's advice. Shaking her head, Hiruyu indicated that she did not know. Foundation. After leaving behind these two words, Yu Haoran walked directly to Wu Qingyuan, who had been knocked unconscious by the bare fist. He crushed a 10th-level first-grade pill used to calm one's qi and focus one's mind, and scattered it on Wu Qingyuan's body. Soon after, Wu Qingyuan, who was stimulated by the pill, slowly woke up. "Who are you?" After opening his eyes, Wu Qingyuan asked as he observed his condition. 100 Qi Gate, Clear Cloud Peak, 9th disciple of Martial King Wu Wei Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran introduced himself. "You're Yu Haoran, the one known as the Bloody Butcher, who has the secret technique to transform into a strange beast and suppressed all the martial emperors in the 100 Qi Gate." After hearing Yu Haoran's self-introduction, Wu Qingyuan was so frightened that he forgot to check his own condition and looked at him with a frightened expression. Yu Haoran exclaimed in surprise when he heard Wu Qingyuan shout out his two unique traits and the magnificent feats he had done in the past while he was distracted. "I didn't expect that my name, Yu Haoran, would actually reach the giant sword sect, which is thousands of miles away. Haoran, let alone the giant sword sect, I'm afraid that even the Qingqing sect, the 100 Qi Gate's sworn enemy, and the Emperor Qin's kingdom, have spread the name of Yu Haoran, the Bloody Butcher." Hiruyu, who had followed closely behind Yu Haoran, teased him with a smile. "Ruyu, if you say that the Qingqing sect knows about my name, Yu Haoran, then I believe it." Facing Hiruyu's teasing, Yu Haoran was very self-aware. "However, if you say that my name, Yu Haoran, is also spread in the Emperor Qin's kingdom, I'm afraid that's not very realistic. Haoran, whether your name is really that famous or not, won't we know when we enter the Emperor Qin's kingdom?" Hiruyu didn't argue too much and said with a smile. "That's true." Nodding his head, Yu Haoran's gaze turned towards Wu Qingyuan. "Yu Haoran, although our giant sword sect is a subsidiary sect of your 100 Qi Gate, we also have the right to be independent. Why did you suddenly sneak attack me?" Just as Yu Haoran and Hiruyu were discussing their reputations, Wu Qingyuan, who had barely recovered from his shock, took the initiative to question Yu Haoran. "Do you know who she is?" Faced with Wu Qingyuan's preemptive questioning, Yu Haoran sneered, then pointed at Hiruyu and asked. "The leader of the Echo Mountain bandit group, the Black Widow respected by all 18 bandit groups." Wu Qingyuan pretended to be ignorant and said. In this regard, Yu Haoran didn't care. Then, he pointed at Wu Xingjun, who was healing with the help of pills behind him, and asked. "Then do you know who she is?" Shaking his head, Wu Qingyuan indicated that he didn't know. "Then I'll tell you now." Reaching out his hand to grab Hiruyu's left hand, Yu Haoran's voice gradually raised as he announced. "The leader of the Echo Mountain bandit group, the Black Widow respected by all 18 bandit groups, is already my, Yu Haoran's, woman." Hearing Yu Haoran announce that she was his woman in front of outsiders for the first time, although Hiruyu shyly lowered her head, her heart felt as if she had eaten honey. She felt incomparably happy. "And the young man whose mind was injured by you using your divine sense is my, Yu Haoran's, brother, closer than a real brother. How dare you hurt my woman? How dare you injure my brother? How do you think I should punish you?" Yu Haoran sneered and threatened Wu Qingyuan as he swept his gaze over him. Seeing that Yu Haoran didn't hide the naked killing intent in his eyes, Wu Qingyuan was so scared that he hurriedly begged for mercy. "Yu Haoran, I really didn't know their relationship with you beforehand. Otherwise, even if you lent me 10 guts, I wouldn't dare to hurt them." Although it's said that the ignorant can't be blamed, I, Yu Haoran, am a narrow-minded villain. So, if you want to keep your life, you'd better show me an attitude that satisfies me. Otherwise, you should be able to imagine what the outcome will be. Twisting his neck, Yu Haoran sneered and threatened. "Yu Haoran, this is a storage bag with a space of 90 square meters. It contains my, Wu Qingyuan's, lifetime collection, As long as he could show him an attitude that satisfied him, he could keep his life. Yu Haoran's declaration just now made He Qingyuan feel as if he had grasped the last life-saving straw. Therefore, he hurriedly took out his most precious storage bag and handed it to Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran asked Thowling to remove the mark that Wu Qingyuan had left on the storage bag. After taking a closer look, he was immediately stunned by the collection in the storage bag. Nearly 70,000 7th level and 8th level spirit stones occupied more than half of the storage bag. Dozens of bottles of elixirs of different levels were neatly placed together. Hundreds of precious elixirs of different levels were perfectly preserved in jade and wooden boxes, just like elixirs. In addition to the spirit stones, elixirs, and elixirs, Wu Qingyuan's storage bag also contained 3 offensive Upper King's stage celestial devices, 1 Upper Grandmaster's stage defensive celestial device, and some refining materials. Although the collection in Wu Qingyuan's storage bag couldn't be compared with his own, there was still a considerable gap between it and the elders of the 100 Qi Gates Senior Statesman's Peak. Chapter 453. The Giant Sword Sect in Front of the Dense Forest. Wu Qingyuan, why don't I let you take a look at Yu Haoran's collection and let you decide if the things you just took out are worth your life? Yu Haoran put away his complicated feelings and took out his storage ring. He waved it at Wu Qingyuan and let him make his choice. Wu Qingyuan glanced at the storage ring in Yu Haoran's hand. He knew that he didn't need to check the items in the storage ring to know that the top-quality storage bag he just gave up and the items in it couldn't satisfy Yu Haoran. However, other than a low-level Emperor-level sword, he was so poor that he only had his underwear left. He couldn't take out anything that could satisfy Yu Haoran. In the end, he could only look at Yu Haoran with a sad face. Sigh. Yu Haoran couldn't help but sigh when he saw Wu Qingyuan's pitiful appearance. He spoke in a compassionate tone. Although I, Yu Haoran, am a narrow-minded person, I'm also a person who knows right from wrong. Wu Qingyuan, even if you're the 3rd elder of the Giant Sword Sect's Senior Statesman Peak, you must know the method to control the 1,000-sword heart-devouring formation. As long as you're willing to hand over the method to control the 1,000-sword heart-devouring formation, I, Yu Haoran, won't lay a finger on you. I'll even give you the best healing pills. To truly measure a sect's foundation, there were 2 very important criteria besides the cultivation of the sect's top experts and the nurturing and growth of the younger generation. The first criterion was to see if the sect had any means of deterrence, a trump card that could make other forces not dare to act rashly. For example, a top-quality magic weapon. He had just asked Hiryu why the Giant Sword Sect, whose number of martial emperors and overall strength didn't lose to the 100 Qi Gate, hadn't been able to replace the 100 Qi Gate and become a second-rate sect. The reason was that the Giant Sword Sect lacked a magic tool that could play a decisive role. Although the overall strength of the 100 Qi Gate had declined so much that even the affiliated sects dared to pretend to comply but secretly oppose them, the 100 Qi Gate was still very powerful. But until now, the Qingqing sect, which was also a second-rate sect, did not dare to make a move easily. What they were really afraid of was the top-grade Saint Realm celestial device hidden in the Senior Statesman's Peak. It was an intact trump card that could play a decisive role. However, in order to activate a Saint Realm best-grade celestial artifact, not only did it require a huge amount of spiritual stones, but it also required 3 7th-grade martial emperors or 5 to 7 3rd-grade martial emperors. Only then could the Saint Realm best-grade celestial artifact exert its true power. This was also the reason why the 12 elders were unwilling to use that top-grade Sage Stage magic tool even after Yu Haoran forced Zhao Ji to leave and forcibly pushed Chu Zhongyu to the position of sect master. However, if the 100 Qi Gate was really in danger of being exterminated, the martial emperors in the sect would have to use their best Saint Stage celestial devices regardless of whether they were willing or not. because this was not only their responsibility, but also the foundation of the senior statesman's peak's existence. In his previous life, when the 100 Gate was exterminated, Yu Haoran had seen the power of the 5 martial emperors working together to activate the Saint Realm Best Grade Celestial Artifact. In addition to the Saint Realm Best Grade Celestial Artifact that could really change the situation of the battle, the second criterion was to be able to prevent the enemy from entering the sect. As a whole, the Giant Sword sect's strength was not inferior to the 100 Gate. The Giant Sword sect's mountain-protecting formation was actually of the same origin as the Heavenly Sword sect's. However, limited by the ability of the Giant Sword sect to set up the formation, as well as the lack of resources needed to set up the formation, the heart-devouring 10,000 Swords formation, which could originally reach the peak of the 9th grade Martial Emperor realm, was reduced to a heart-devouring 10,000 Swords formation by the founder of the Giant Sword sect. He only let the Black Bear seriously injure Wu Qingyuan, but not directly kill him. The purpose was to get a part of the control of the heart-devouring 1,000 Swords formation from him, so that he could eliminate the only threat of the Giant Sword sect. Then, he could use the secret transformation technique and the Black Bear to kill the Giant Sword sect. No! Hearing Yu Haoran ask for the control of the heart-devouring 1,000 Swords formation, Wu Qingyuan did not even think about it, directly shaking his head and refusing. Black Bear, directly smash him into a meat patty. Facing Wu Qingyuan's refusal, Yu Haoran did not have the slightest intention of persuading him or continuing to threaten him. He directly ordered the Black Bear to attack. Wait a minute. Yu Haoran's cold and decisive action caused Wu Qingyuan, who originally wanted to bargain, to immediately collapse. He hurriedly stopped him in a loud voice. Wu, since you have heard of Yu Haoran's reputation, you should also know my character. Seeing that Wu Qingyuan's psychological defense had completely collapsed, Yu Haoran secretly rejoiced. However, he still maintained a cold expression on his face as he threatened. I, Yu Haoran, am not a very patient person. I hope that your following answer will not disappoint me. I know. Nodding his head, Wu Qingyuan then told Yu Haoran everything he knew about the control of the heart-devouring 1,000 Swords formation. Wu, I forgot to tell you. I, Yu Haoran, am proficient in the art of formations other than mastering the secret technique of transforming into an exotic beast. If you want to deceive me through trickery, the result will be even crueler than directly smashing you into a meat patty. Although Yu Haoran didn't find any problems with the formation control technique that Wu Qingyuan provided, he still felt that something wasn't quite right. Therefore, he told the pagoda spirit about the formation controlling hand gestures and asked it to check if the formation controlling hand gestures were correct with its superior cultivation in formations. At the same time, he also tried to scare Wu Qingyuan, hoping to get a different answer. Yu Haoran, the formation control technique that I just recited was passed down from more than 10 generations of the Giant Sword sect's third elder. As for whether it is true or not, you can personally test it when you enter the Giant Sword sect. Facing Yu Haoran's intimidation, Wu Qingyuan guaranteed with an attitude of not lying. After hearing Wu Qingyuan's guarantee, Yu Haoran already started to believe in the authenticity of the formation control technique. However, at this moment, the Thaling in his sea of consciousness sneered. Yu Haoran, don't be fooled by this fellow. Thaling, what's going on? Yu Haoran hurriedly asked. 99% of the formation control technique that this fellow told you is true. However, the most crucial part is missing the method to control the formation and gather the 1,000 swords to attack. If you use the formation control technique to condense the 1,000 swords, the 1,000 swords that have no target to attack will instead attack you. The Thaling's tone was filled with ridicule as it explained. After hearing the Thaling's explanation, Yu Haoran's eyes immediately surged with endless killing intent. However, he didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he asked the Thaling if it could fill in the crucial part of the formation. Yu Haoran, not only can I fill in the missing formation control technique, I can also use the formation control technique to seize control of the entire formation, allowing you to use the giant sword sex mountain protecting formation. Chapter 454. Giant Sword Sect in Front of the Dense Forest. Wu Qing Yuan, it seems like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. You won't turn back until you hit the wall. After carefully observing the mistakes that Thaling had pointed out, Yu Haoran finally understood Wu Qing Yuan's sinister intentions. It turned out that Wu Qing Yuan wanted to use the giant sword sex mountain protecting formation, the 1,000-sword heart-devouring formation, to kill him with 1,000 swords. Therefore, he didn't plan on letting Wu Qing Yuan go. At this moment, the thought of directly attacking Wu Qing Yuan appeared in his mind. Wu Qing Yuan, it's not that I, Yu Haoran, have broken my promise. It's that you're courting death. After directly pointing out the mistakes in the formation control incantation that Wu Qing Yuan had just taught him, Yu Haoran sneered. Wu Qing Yuan, do you have any last words? Hearing Yu Haoran accurately point out the mistakes in deliberately changing the formation control incantation, Wu Qing Yuan's face instantly turned pale. This was because he had never thought that the seemingly young Yu Haoran would not only have an extremely fast cultivation speed, but also an understanding of formations that didn't lose out to his cultivation. In order to calm Yu Haoran's anger and protect his own life, Wu Qing Yuan quickly thought about the giant sword sect's most hidden secret. He hoped that this would be able to persuade Yu Haoran to let him live. Black Bear, do it! Yu Haoran pulled He Ruyu back a few steps and directly signaled. Yu Haoran, the reason why our giant sword sect dares to fight against the 100 Qi Gate, in addition to the increase in our overall strength, is because we have just obtained a complete mid-level sage stage magic weapon. After quickly recalling, Wu Qing Yuan found a few secrets that could shake the entire sect's foundation. However, these secrets might not be able to move Yu Haoran. In the end, he still chose the most secretive secret that only a few elders and the sect leader knew. A complete mid-level sage stage magic weapon. Hearing Wu Qing Yuan reveal important information in order to protect his own life, Yu Haoran's heart shook. However, he didn't stop the black bear from attacking and allowed it to smash Wu Qing Yuan into a meat patty. Haoran, why don't you wait until you break through to the martial sage realm before coming to find trouble with the giant sword sect? The secret that Wu Qing Yuan revealed at the end shocked He Ruyu. She couldn't help but advise him. After all, a complete middle-grade sage stage magic tool was different from the low-grade sage stage pill furnace that Yu Haoran obtained from the Echo Mountain bandits. This was because a complete mid-grade Sage Realm offensive magic artifact would not only be able to unleash the power of its grade, but it would also be able to mobilize the aura of the laws contained within the mid-grade Sage Realm magic artifact, perfectly unleashing the strength of a mid-grade martial saint. However, the quality of the pill furnace that Yu Haoran had obtained had only reached the low-level Sage Realm. But it lacked the most crucial aura of the principle. Therefore, a complete Saint Stage Dermic treasure was different from a Saint Stage Dermic treasure. After thinking about it carefully, Yu Haoran asked the Thaling message in his Sea of Consciousness. Thaling, how long do you need to deduce the complete hand gestures to control the entire 1,000 Swords Devouring Heart formation? At most, an hour. Thaling replied to Yu Haoran's question as he used the hand gestures provided by Wu Qing Yuan to deduce the other complete hand gestures. An hour later, Yu Haoran shook his head at He Ruyu, knowing what was going on. It's okay, I have my own way. Then, he walked to Wu Jingjuan's side and sat down cross-legged. He used the spirit stones to recover the origin energy that he had just consumed and carefully calculated every step that he would take to break into the giant sword sect. 50 minutes later, with the help of the top pills, Wu Jingjuan, who had recovered 70% of his mental injuries, slowly opened his eyes. At this time, Yu Haoran also finished recovering his origin energy. Yu Haoran nodded to Wu Jingjun and Hiryu, then stood up and instructed He Xiong, transform. Jumping onto Black Bear's back, Yu Haoran said to Hiryu and Wu Jingjun, who were following closely behind, Ryu Jingjun, I'll take you to take revenge now. Black Bear, maintain a normal speed and fly to the Giant Sword Sect. Yes, Master. About 700 miles northeast of the dense forest, there was a mountain range formed by dozens of mountains. In the mountain range, the spirit chi was abnormally abundant and the scenery was very beautiful. But the most eye-catching thing was that among the dozens of connected mountains, there was a strange mountain peak that reached into the clouds and was shaped like a giant sword. And this giant sword-like mountain peak was the origin of the Giant Sword Sect. However, unlike the 100 Chi Gates 100 feet peak, the giant sword-like mountain peak was too narrow and not suitable for living. Thus, the giant sword-like mountain peak was only the symbol of the Giant Sword Sect. Tiger Subdue Peak was the mountain where the Giant Sword Sect's leader lived. It was also the mountain with the most abundant spirit chi and the most beautiful scenery in the entire mountain range. Tiger Subdue, Hidden Dragon Subdue Tiger, represented the overall development of the Giant Sword Sect. At this moment, in the meeting hall of Tiger Subdue Peak, 12 Doyens, 6 of whom were Martial Kings, 9 of whom were Peak Masters at the peak of 9th grade Martial King, and the strongest person in the Giant Sword Sect, the leader of the Giant Sword Sect, Wu Xing, who was at the peak of 4th grade Martial King, were all gathered in the meeting hall. On the east side of the hall, below the Doyens, Wu Zhen, whose aura had barely returned to the Martial King realm, was saying something with a face full of anger and fear. Everyone, the 12 Doyens have already explained the situation in detail. What do you all think? Wu Xing, who was sitting at the head of the hall, asked calmly. What can we think? Let's just send out the experts of the sect to kill the Black Widow and that youth. A Peak Master with a fiery temper and an early 1st grade Martial King on the west side said with a murderous aura. Peak Master G, didn't you hear the 12 Doyens say that the black bear that the youth brought with him was a 5th grade 9th grade Martial Emperor beast that was 59 meters tall? An elder on the east side, who was only at the peak of 9th grade Martial King but ranked 9th, mocked the hot-tempered Peak Master with a disdainful expression. 9th Elder, it's not that I doubt the judgment of the 12 Doyens. Peak Master G, who seemed to have a fiery temper but was actually very clear-minded, retorted the 9th Elder without any anger. If the black bear that the youth who saved the Black Widow was accompanied by was a 5th grade 9th grade Martial Emperor beast, how could the 12 Doyens have escaped back to the sect in such a heavily injured state? You with the surname G, the reason why I, Wu Zhen, was able to escape back to the sect alive was because the 3rd Elder attracted the attention of the youth and the black bear, causing them to temporarily not pay attention to me, Wu Zhen explained in a panic when faced with Peak Master G's questioning. Chapter 455. Tiger Subduing Peak, Conference Hall. As long as there were people, there would be conflicts. Although the conflicts within the Giant Sword Sect were not as cruel as those within the 100 Chi Gate, there were still intense internal conflict. Furthermore, unlike the conflicts within the 100 Chi Gate, the internal conflicts within the Giant Sword Sect were mostly between the internal and external clans. This was because the development of the Giant Sword Sect was very similar to the development of the clans. The ones who truly controlled the power and resources of the sect were the sect leaders faction and the Doyen Peaks faction with the surname Wu. However, as the Giant Sword Sect's overall strength continued to increase, some geniuses who joined the Giant Sword Sect and had exceptional talent and potential who were not surnamed Wu gradually became dissatisfied with the Wu clan controlling the sect after gaining strength that was not inferior to the Wu clan. After 100 years of development, those geniuses who were not from the Wu clan had all ascended to the upper echelons of the sect. As they grew stronger, they gradually joined forces and started to fight with the Wu clan for control of the sect. Among them, there were more than a dozen peak masters who were martial emperors and martial kings sitting on the west side. Oh! After hearing 12th Elder's explanation, Peak Leader Ji's eyes suddenly lit up. He quickly seized the loophole in 12th Elder's explanation and launched a fierce attack. 12th Elder, since 3rd Elder was trapped by the Black Widow and the Black Bear in order to save you, why didn't you join forces with 3rd Elder? Instead, you ran away alone. Facing Peak Leader Ji's fierce attack, Wu Zhen immediately realized his mistake and didn't know how to answer. This was because he was shocked by the Black Bear's strength and only wanted to save his own life. He didn't even consider the possibility of joining forces. 12th Elder, because of your cowardice, you caused 3rd Elder to be in danger. I don't know how you are going to face 3rd Elder's family now, and how you can continue to enjoy the treatment of a doyen. Seeing that Wu Zhen was confused by his attack, Peak Leader Ji obediently continued his fierce attack. In the face of Peak Master Ji's obedient pursuit, especially his mental questioning, Wu Zhen's mind felt as if it had suffered a heavy blow. He took a step back and looked at Peak Master Ji with a pale face. Ji Mingyong, enough. Seeing that the Peak Master surnamed Ji was still unwilling to let Wu Zhen go even though his mind had been seriously injured and his aura had once again dropped to the level of a 9th-grade martial king, an old man on the eastern head seat fiercely slapped the armrest of his chair and loudly reprimanded. The old man who shouted was the head elder of the Giant Sword Sect's senior elder Peak. He was also a middle-stage 4th-rank martial king and his strength was second only to Wu Xing. Facing the 1st Elder's stern rebuke, Ji Ming shrugged his shoulders and leaned back in his chair with a helpless expression. The sect master summoned all of you here to discuss how to deal with the Black Widow, as well as the danger brought about by the Black Bear youth, who can command the 9th rank of the 5th step. It's not for you to quarrel. Although Ji Mingyong had already stopped attacking, the irritated 1st Elder still criticized him with a gloomy expression. 1st Elder, I'm sorry. I was too emotional just now and didn't think things through. I promise I won't do it again. Although the Great Elder's criticism was directed at him and the 12th Elder, Ji Mingyong could clearly sense that the Great Elder was mainly targeting him. If he didn't take the initiative to admit his mistake and admit defeat, then the Great Elder's criticism wouldn't stop. Therefore, the astute Ji Mingyong directly stood up and apologized. Just be careful in the future. After nodding at Ji Mingyong, the 1st Elder no longer expressed any opinion on the quarrel between the two of them. Following the Great Elder's silence, the scene suddenly quieted down. It was quiet for nearly 10 minutes. Seeing that everyone's silence wasn't a solution, the head elder of the west side, Li Zhongming, took the initiative to break the silence. He was also the strongest of the Peak Masters with a cultivation of the early 4th-rank martial king. Sect Master, 1st Elder, although the Giant Sword Sect's strength has increased rapidly in the past few decades, in terms of the cultivation of the strongest experts, we are still lacking compared to second-rate sections. Even if all of us here join forces, I'm afraid we won't be a match for the Black Bear that has reached the 9th rank of the 5th step. Therefore, my idea is to wait and see. Peak Masterly, don't tell me we don't care about the 3rd Elder who is currently in danger. Wait and see, that is, don't care. Li Zhongming's suggestion immediately aroused the strong opposition of the 2nd strongest Elder of the martial department, Wu Wei. 2nd Elder, almost an hour has passed since the 12th Elder fled back to the sect. Such a long time has passed. With the Black Widow's murderous nature, do you think the 3rd Elder is still alive? Li Zhongming asked coldly in response to Wu Wei's strong opposition. Peak Masterly, as the saying goes, seeing is believing. Before seeing that Black Bear of the 9th rank of the 5th rank, none of us can be sure that a young man in the martial master realm can drive a Black Bear at the peak of the 9th rank of the martial royal realm. Facing Li Zhongming's question, the second elder retorted, not to be outdone. Before we see the third elder's corpse, none of us can be sure whether he has been killed or not. Since the second elder is so concerned about the third elder's safety, then the second elder should personally go to the martial training forest to check and confirm whether what the 12th elder said was true. Facing the second elder's counterattack, Li Zhongming mocked and ridiculed him while also secretly trying to goad him into action. That's enough. Wu Xing, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines, saw that Li Zhongming and Ji Wei, who represented the Peak Master's faction, were either provoking or goading the martial department's elder into taking the risk. Wu Xing finally could not suppress his anger and reprimanded them. After Li Zhongming and Wu Wei stopped arguing, Wu Xing took a deep breath and tried his best to maintain a calm tone as he spoke. Although the 12th elder did not care about the third elder's safety and fled back to the sect and should be punished by the sect, I believe that with the 12th elder's eyesight as a martial king, he will not be mistaken about the current situation. Due to the limitations of our giant sword sect's strength, I've decided to follow Peak Master Li's suggestion and wait and see. That's enough. Meeting adjourned. Waving his hand, Wu Xing, who was very depressed by the conflict between the sects, waved his hand, indicating that everyone could leave. However, just as the senior elders and Peak Masters stood up and were about to leave the meeting hall, a deafening roar suddenly came from within the giant sword sect. Following the deafening roar, the mountain range where the giant sword sect was located began to shake. Not good. Enemy attack. Feeling the shaking of the mountain range, the expression of Wu Xing, who had the highest cultivation, changed. He then rushed out of the meeting hall. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.